Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
Ready to jump back in.
Excellent. Well, we're here then. So part 2 of the exciting Turner Diaries, and we're on chapter 8. And so the organisation, if you remember, they've just murdered about 700 people by blowing up the FBI building, and they've decided that they need to start killing thousands of innocent people in order to basically get attention, which is psychotic. So, chapter 8 begins. Due to the organisation's attacks, the police have set up loads of roadblocks and checks everywhere, and security's also beefed up when you need to enter federal buildings. So they decide to start lobbing grenades into government buildings by drive-by, which is interesting, okay. Really. Such a staple of gangster culture and gangster rap and stuff like that. William Pierce appears to have, I don't know if he invented it, but he certainly, I'll put it this way. This is before NWA.
Reclaimed it.
Yeah. So they also feel that the public is still too comfortable to basically embrace the organisation, but this isn't because they're murdering them. No. This is because of the media. The media has basically described them as gangsters and murderers, which is completely accurate, to be quite honest. But even down to the fact that they seem to have invented drive-bys. So,
it's spot on, yeah.
Anyway, so they while away the times building bombs, and him and Catherine, the woman who likes makeup and clothes and used to be a secretary, they move into a room with a married couple. Right. Now, if you thought the first bit of the book and the first part of it was grim, and it was, strap yourself in, because this is where it really starts to uptick. And this is a plot point. We first get a little bit of casual sexism, because obviously. And then we get the most absolutely ludicrous narrative idea that you've ever heard in your entire life, that essentially drives the entire plot. And this is like Alex Jones's worst nightmare. It's also, ironically, basically a sort of lesser version of what many people on Twitter think is happening today. It's so stupid and over the top in its attempt to make liberal ideas and tolerance seem to be some sort of slippery slope to a nightmare scenario, that this, when I first read this, genuinely made me wonder if this book was actually satire. Because this is the sort of thing that Brass Eye would do, or Chris Morris. It's this level of...
Yeah.
How preposterous it is.
Yeah. Strap yourself in. Right, so
let's go. Come on, don't hold back, Neil.
We've been strapped in since minute 1 of episode 1.
Although unmarried female members are theoretically equal to male members in that they're subject...
Oh, here we go. Theoretically equal. Nice.
Although unmarried female members are theoretically equal to male members in that they are subject to the same discipline, our women are actually cherished and protected to a much larger degree than women in general society are. Consider rape, for example, which has become such an omnipresent pestilence these days. It had already been increasing at a rate of 20 to 25% per year since the early 1970s, until last year, when the Supreme Court ruled that all laws making rape a crime are unconstitutional because they presume a legal difference between the sexes. Did you catch that?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're essentially saying that, well, if men and women want to be equal, then, there's no difference between the sexes, and therefore rape must be legal. That's going to be that is going to be ultimately the end consequence of feminism. It gets worse.
This is bizarre. This is
It gets
insane.
so much worse. Right, so rape, the judges rule, can only be prosecuted under the statutes covering non-sexual assaults. In other words, rape has been reduced to the status of a punch in the nose. In cases where no physical injury can be proved, it is now virtually impossible to obtain a prosecution or even an arrest. The result of this judicial mischief has been that the incidence of rape has zoomed to the point that the legal statisticians have recently estimated that 1 out of every 2 American women can expect to be raped at least once in her lifetime.
Ugh.
But honestly, wait. In many of the big cities, of course, the statistics are much worse. The women's lib groups have greeted this development with dismay. It isn't exactly what they had in mind when they began agitating for equality 2 decades ago. At least there's dismay among the rank and file of such groups. I have suspicion that their leaders, most of whom are Jews, had this outcome in mind from the beginning. Black civil rights spokesmen, on the other hand, have had only praise for the Supreme Court's decision. Rape laws, they said, are racist because a disproportionately large number of blacks have been charged under them. Nowadays, gangs of black thugs hang around parking lots and school playgrounds and roam the corridors of office buildings and apartment complexes looking for any attractive, unescorted white girl, and knowing that punishment, either from a disarmed citizenry or the handcuffed police, is extremely unlikely. Gang rapes in school classrooms have become an especially popular new sport. Some particularly liberal women may find that this situation provides a certain amount of satisfaction for their masochism, a way of atoning for their feelings of racial guilt. But for normal, white women, it is a daily nightmare. One of the sickest aspects of the whole thing is that many young whites, instead of opposing this new threat to their race, have apparently decided to join it. White rapists have become more common, and there have even been instances of integrated rape gangs recently. Nor have the girls remained entirely passive. Sexual debauchery of every sort on the part of the young white men and women, and even children in their pre-teens, has reached a level which would have been unimaginable only 2 or 3 years ago. The queers, the fetishists, the mixed-race couples, the sadists, and the exhibitionists, urged on by the mass media, are parading their perversions in public, and the public is joining them. I told you.
Motherfucker! Wow.
So to
stunned. Like,
right. So just to sum up, what they're saying is that the logical conclusion of sexual equality is that for some reason rape will not be considered a crime anymore. I presume because the idea is that, well, you're equal, you should have fought him off. But that doesn't even make any sense because, fighting's still a crime. It literally doesn't make any sense.
None of this book makes sense.
No, but it is
none of this book makes sense.
But it's one of those things where that's clicking with me. And then the second part is literally the concept of 2-tier policing, just amped up to absolutely ludicrous ideas. It strongly infers that the people of color are predisposed to crime, predisposed to sexual crime, and that tipped the balance. It's so insane. The idea that basically, like, they didn't want to be racist, so essentially, if you are of color, you can get away with crime. That is what this is saying, which is exactly the stupid argument.
Stupid.
That's the argument that people are having at the minute on Twitter.
Yeah.
That people didn't want to be racist, and so you get away with it if you're a so-called asylum seeker. Yeah. It's crazy, but it's essentially the same thing. Like, it's also, so the casual sexism in there, like it's women lose out by not being considered inferior and lesser, And by not being the property and objects of these strong, manly men, they're going to lose out, because it's, you know, it's a crazy world out there. It's stupid. And like, this is as good a time as any to, like, because this is a far more extreme version of the argument that's currently used by racists, that, oh, we're forced into this position. I had this argument with somebody on a radio show not recently, like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't say things like, you shouldn't. It was, this woman had called a little black boy the N-word, and she'd been filmed doing it, and everyone was saying, yeah, no, you should say that. And I was, why should you say that? Well, we've kind of been forced into this position. And I was like, sorry, what? Well, you see, we're so sick of being told what we can and can't say that we're just lashing out and lashing back, and that's why people are getting behind this woman and sending her money and stuff like that. And I was like, this is an insane argument. In this case, it's that violence must be is because of tolerated violence, that just so happens to be by black people. But in the modern parlance of it, it's that. And here's where the argument falls down. We're sick of being told that racism is wrong, and so we're going to be racist. And it's like, okay, but it all boils down to whether you think racism is wrong or not. Because if you think racism is wrong, why would you lash out at being told that racism is wrong by using racism? And if you don't think that racism is wrong, then you're just using that as an excuse to be racist. So the argument doesn't hold up. It's an excuse. And there's another thing that's being sort of floated around at the minute, right? Okay. And she's like, I never used to think of myself as racist or far right, but apparently I am now. And it's like, well, have your attitudes changed over the last 20 years? Because society has, in a lot of ways, right? I've said this before, like, when I was at school, right? Okay, we did racist versions of nursery rhymes, like, because that was part of the culture at the time. And I remember a teacher at our school saying, you shouldn't say that, you should change that, the N-word, to tiger. It was the, you know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch her by its toe. Like, and so attitudes have changed a lot. And he said, could it be that the reason that basically you don't think of yourself as being behind the times or being far right is because you surround yourself with people who have similar views, and you've just never been challenged on that view? Like, and you're perfectly entitled to that view. If you want to be as backwards as that, fine, do what you want, right? Okay. But other people have got a right to challenge you and to say, no, that's ridiculous. We now live in a time where the P slur, the N slur, it doesn't, we respect people too much to do it casually. It's not a thing that we do anymore. And it was born out of ignorance and born out of an idea that people are lesser as human beings. We don't do casual sexism. We don't do homophobia. It's not a thing anymore, right? Because Christ, some people who are alive knew when it was illegal to be homosexual. Like, times have changed, and people need to just fucking cope, basically.
But this is like the weird position of like the modern right, that it so hates liberalism. It's so built up liberalism as this kind of totalitarian enemy, and it's so swallowed that pill.
Yeah.
You know, if we go with that kind of imagery, that anything like is seen as an infringement of your freedom of speech and your rights. But it's actually like some of these progressive things of like challenging racism, challenging sexism. These are positive things for like a cohesive society. But people have been so, I think, especially off the back of the pandemic as well, have been so kind of polarized and so pushed into this is my corner that, I never thought in my lifetime you would see this wave of people saying, I'm not far right, but I'm not far wrong. It's like this watering down of like fascism.
Totally, it's absolutely fascism.
This is the end point it has to come to. That it has to somehow undermine women's rights. And it's crazy. But it's just, what's interesting about seeing this book is seeing these opinions just raw and naked. And I'm loving how you're relating it to now as well. You know, seeing
it's the same argument.
These are the seeds, right?
Yeah, and it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like, basically, you make a very good point. They pitch it as this totalitarianism, that something is being imposed on them, that's being forced on them. But the thing that's being forced on them is people who don't have the same skin color or ethnic background to them. And so that's why they have to frame it as if it's an attack, frame these people as criminals, as rapists, as people that then they don't want to integrate. They don't want to, like, they're determined to, like, destroy our culture. We can't have both at the same time. And it's like, that's a stupid argument, because yes, you can fucking have both. And the second thing, when people say, like, yeah, they're destroying our culture, it's like, really? When was the last time you went fucking Morris dancing? Seriously, like, when was the last time? Tell me who Henry VIII's wives were. Fuck all about culture. So don't use that as a fucking excuse. Like, it's just.
And then they also get mad when there'll be like a Muslim hiking group or something, and they'll be like, "How dare you?" And it's like, well, wait a minute, you want them to embrace English culture? It's like, what? Like, make your mind up. But we know these arguments are ludicrous, so these people will never be satisfied.
Hey ho, but yeah. So anyway, Chapter 9, and the president announces that the internal passport scheme is a way to stamp out racism and to combat terrorism more effectively. And Washington, D.C. is heavily guarded by military. But luckily, the organisation managed to shoot some mortar rounds near the Capitol building, and they kill a group of soldiers. We saw beautiful blossoms of flame and steel sprouting everywhere, dancing across the asphalt, thundering in the midst of splintery masonry and burning vehicles, erupting now inside and now outside the Capitol, wreaking their bloody toil in the ranks of tyranny and treason. And simultaneously, it's so.
I'm just getting flashbacks of nature took her course, and then he's just got this.
That's probably the best written bit in the entire book. It's actually quite poetic. I'm surprised. Simultaneously, the Los Angeles Council were voting on anti-racist measures, and so the organisation rolled by and throw grenades at them. An hour earlier, in New York, the organisation used a bazooka to shoot down an airliner which had just taken off for Tel Aviv with a load of vacationing dignitaries, mostly Jews. There were no survivors. And to think the media had the gall to call them murderers and gangsters. It's so deluded. Right, so they think, as the system, which we remember is the government, is so corrupt that they will see politicians trying to bargain with the organisation. And Turner says, for now, we mustn't let them know that they are all inevitably headed for the gallows. Let them think that they can make a deal with us and save their necks. When the system falls, only the Jews are under no illusions in this regard. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like, you can't trust anyone nowadays, even a far-right terrorist organisation, to keep their word. But they also worry that the general public isn't that bothered as long as basically they've got food and TV, and recruiting is getting harder and harder. And at no point does anyone think, maybe it's because we're killing people. No, it's because they think they're fucking Bill Hicks here. So everyone's watching Gladiators. Go back to bed, America. Go back to bed, America. Like, it's nothing to do with the mass murder, indiscriminate murder of innocent people. No, absolutely not. Of all the segments of the population for which we had hoped to draw new members, the conservatives and right-wingers have been the biggest disappointment. They're the world's worst conspiracy mongers, and also the world's greatest cowards. In fact, their cowardice is exceeded only by their stupidity. The current conspiracy theory being circulated among conservatives is that the organisation is actually in pay of the system. We are hired provocateurs whose job it is to raise enough hell to justify the repressive, counter-revolutionary and anti-racist measures that the system is taking. If we would just stop rocking the boat, things would be easier on everyone. Whether they believe that theory or not, it gives them an excuse for not joining us. But here's, several things.
So the organization is an inside job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. But there is one sort of flaw in what he's saying. Like he said, if the conspiracy theory is that if only we weren't rocking the boat, then the system wouldn't be taking these oppressive measures. That's what they're doing. That's explicitly what they said they were doing.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Does that mean the tactic is counterproductive or whatnot? Also, what that is doing there, that's baiting people, because a lot of people that get this book won't be neo-Nazis. They won't think of themselves as Nazis, or maybe even not far right. They might think of themselves as libertarian, gun type people, militia type people. And that is basically saying, man up, you pussies. Like,
yes, a little dig at the kind
absolutely.
of mainstream right.
Yeah, totally. It's yeah. Now, again, passages like this next one made me wonder if it was actually brilliantly written satire, but I don't think it is. I think it's
unfortunately
no. But listen to this and see if, like, this is just, there's lots of paragraphs like this, and it just makes me just go, for fuck's sake. It's so over the top and so lacking in self-awareness. The system's brainwashing has not bent everyone's mind out of shape. There are still millions and millions of good people out there who neither believe the system's propaganda nor have allowed themselves to be seduced to the animal-like level of existence of so many who live solely for the sake of gratifying their senses. How can we motivate these people to join us? Life is uglier and uglier these days. More and more Jewish. It's fucking stupid. But it is still moderately comfortable, and comfort is the great corrupter and the great maker of cowards. It seems that, for the time being, we have already caught all the real revolutions in America in our net, and now we must learn how to make some more, and quickly. And it's like, that, it doesn't even make sense, that, like, does it? It's just unpleasant. But again, it was, that reminds...
It's like he uses, like, racism and casual sexism and all that as, like, punctuation marks.
Yeah.
It's just dotted everywhere.
Well, it's also increasing as the book goes on, like, which is, possibly because, if we remember, this was written as a serial, that was what people responded to, maybe.
True. Yeah.
Possibly. Or actually, this is his character arc. He's gone from absolute wanker to complete mentalist. Like, so, but...
and throughout, there's this constant kind of message of, like, wake up from, like, the rest of... It's the classic sheeple, right?
Absolutely,
everyone's too comfortable. Everyone's watching TV, wrapped up in materialism.
Yeah,
it's that critique that's just constantly bubbling there.
Well, it's stochastic terrorism. It is.
Yeah,
It literally caused acts of terrorism.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Turner has to go to Georgetown. Excuse me. Georgetown, one of the most stylish areas of Washington, had succumbed in the last 5 years to the same plague which had turned the rest of the nation's capital into an asphalt jungle. Most of the high-priced shops have given way to gay bars, massage parlours, porn stalls, liquor stalls, and similar capitalist ventures. That sounds all right to me, like, let's go Georgetown. Hey. Garbage litters the sidewalks, and blacks, who used to be pretty scarce there, are swarming all over. Nice language. But there are still many whites living in Georgetown after a fashion. The once fashionable townhouses have had their windows boarded up now, and many are occupied by colonies of squatters, mostly young dropouts and runaways. They lead a marginal, brutal existence, begging for handouts in the streets, rummaging through trash bins for leftovers, occasionally stealing. Some of the girls engage in casual prostitution. Virtually all of them, or so I thought until today, keep themselves in a permanently drugged condition. Since the system stopped enforcing the drug laws last year, heroin has been about as cheap and easy to get as cigarettes. The cops leave them alone, although some of the stories about what goes on among these kids are horrifying. Inside their strongholds, the boarded-up buildings in which they cook and eat and sleep, make love and give birth, and pump dope into their veins and die. They seem to have reverted to a pre-civilized lifestyle. Kooky religious cults involving lots of incense and incantations flourish among them. Various brands of Satan worship, reminiscent of the ancient Semitic cults, are especially prevalent. Ritual torture and ritual murder are rumoured to take place, as well as ritual cannibalism, ritual sex orgies, and other non-Western practices.
What?
They're
It
eating
sounds like
the cats and dogs.
It Sounds like he is describing the birth of punk music, though.
A little bit, yeah.
Loads of people
Squatters,
living in squats,
doing
orgies,
drugs,
doing loads of heroin, and actually, it was by the time this came out or became big again in the 90s, it was gentrification that was stopping all this. And
well, this is the
city
thing.
was becoming sanitized.
Wife swapping and witchcraft has always been the mainstay of suburban life, where you've got room to do it. To be honest, about the pampas grass thing. If you see pampas grass on somebody's front garden, chances are there'll be orgiastic bloodletting going on in the conservatory. That's just what it means.
What year was the book again? 68 or 78?
78. It came out as a book. It was, I think, 75 to 78 in the magazine.
Yeah,
so anyway,
because that's quite early for satanic ritual conspiracy stuff. That is quite early.
They've tied it back to the blood libel, essentially. The idea that Jews were killing babies and putting their blood in biscuits.
That's the root of it. Absolutely.
But anyway, so he sees a young white girl named Elsa who's about to be raped by a gang of black men, and he saves her just by scaring them away with his just manly aura. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Oh, there you go. Chapter 10. As a response to the terror attacks, spot checks by police are becoming more common, and Turner complains, all this identity checking has diverted the police from their regular duties, and the blacks and other criminal elements are really taking advantage of it. You're a fucking terrorist. You've murdered hundreds of people. Anyway, some army personnel are also participating in the identity checking and other police operations, but their main duty is still guarding government buildings and media facilities. The most interesting development is that the Human Relations Council have also been given emergency police powers, and they are deputizing large numbers of blacks from the welfare roles, the way they did for the gun raids. In the district and in Alexandria, some of these deputized blacks are already swaggering around and stopping whites on the streets. There are rumours that they are demanding bribes from those they stop, threatening them with arrest if they don't pay. And they've been hauling some white women into their field headquarters for questioning. And there they're stripped, gang raped, and beaten, all in the name of the law. The news media aren't breathing a word about these outrages, of course, but the word is still getting around. People are angry and frightened, but they don't know what to do. Without arms, there is little they can do. They are completely at the mercy of the system. Or it could be that it's not happening. And that's also another possibility. That this is all made up. But also, in fairness, you did have guns and you were still arrested. You're shit. You're just not very good at this, basically.
But everything is through this prism of how important gun culture is to that real kind of American.
Well, that was what it was, wasn't it?
Filter, right?
It was like this tripartite of giving up your guns and treating women and people of colour as if they're human beings. That's ultimately what led to the inevitable downfall of society. This is the message of the book. And, and it's frightening because, again, actually, if you look at certain, certainly say InfoWars output of recent years, that's their message.
This is it.
Pretty much their message. So, anyway, Turner's taken for a loyalty test, which involves being injected with all sorts of drugs. And we find out that if loyalty is doubted even for a second, they're simply killed. And he obviously is loyal because he's given this book to read when he comes out of his trance. The book placed our present struggle, the organisation and its goals, and what is at stake in a much larger context than I have ever really considered before. That is, I'd thought about many of the things in the books before, but I'd never put them all together into a single coherent pattern. I'd never seen the whole picture so clearly. And then there's an editorial comment. Note to the reader, it is obvious that Turner is referring to the book. We know from other evidence that it was written approximately 10 years before the record of martyrs in which it is mentioned, i.e. probably sometime in 9 BNE or 1990, according to the old chronology. Turner mentions type pages, but it is not clear whether he means reproductions of typewritten pages or the originals themselves. If the latter is the case, then we may have here the only extant reference to the original copy of the book. Several reproductions of the original transcript in binders fitting Turner's descriptions have survived and are preserved in the archives, but archaeologists have still found no trace of the original. What book might that be? Because Behold a Pale Horse came out in 1991, so it can't be that. And David Icke's The Truth Vibrations came out in 1991, so that's not it. Mind to Mind, which is the Betty Shine book that sent David Icke loony, that came out in 1989. I think it's Ralph Efferson's The New World Order, because that came out in 1990, and that also heavily influenced Bill Cooper, who would have read large part. If you go and listen to Mystery Babylon, like the first 5 or 6 episodes are basically just him reading out Ralph Efferson's The New World Order. So it could be that it was Ralph Efferson's New World Order. Or it also might be Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, because that did also come out that year. So, and that's got fucking dinosaurs in it. It's a lot better. But we will never know. Anyway, Turner passes the test and is inducted into this higher order of terrorists called the Order. He spoke to us in a quiet voice, explaining that each of us who had been selected for membership in the Order had passed the test of the word and the test of the deed. That is, we'd all proved ourselves, not only through a correct attitude toward the cause, but also through our acts in the struggle for the realization of the cause. As members of the Order, we are to be the bearers of the faith. Only from our ranks will the future leaders of the organization come. He told us many other things too, reiterating some of the ideas I had just read. The Order, he explained, will remain secret, even within the organization, until the successful completion of the first phase of our task, the destruction of the system. And he showed us the sign by which we might recognize one another. So they have gang signs to rep their set, which is nice. Like the amount of West Coast gangster culture that William Pierce appears to be inventing, ironically, is crazy.
I blame the media.
Absolutely. Anyway, so he's mentioned the Order there, and as we mentioned in the first episode, the Order was a terrorist group, which is also known as the Silent Brotherhood, which emulates the secrecy. But the one thing I will point out before we talk about this terrorist group is, if this is supposed to be secret, why are you writing it in your diary, Turner, you stupid bastard?
Surely that's rule number 1, right? Yeah, don't write it down.
And rule number 2, it's just like Fight Club.
Yeah.
So, the Order, also known as the Silent Brotherhood, originally known as the Organization, was a neo-Nazi terrorist group active in the United States between September 1983 and December 1984. The group raised funds via armed robbery. 10 members were tried and convicted for racketeering, and 2 members were tried and convicted for their role in the 1984 murder of radio talk show host Alan Byrne. So, the Order was founded by a man called Robert J. Matthews in 1983, and this was he had a farm, and reportedly Matthews' farm near Washington was where they trained. He was previously the leader of a group called the Sons of Liberty, which is an anti-communist militia mostly made up of Mormon survivalists for some reason. So members of the Order included Randy Evans, Gary Yarborough, Bruce Pierce, Denver Parmenter, Frank De Silva, Richard Scutari, David Lane, who came up with the 14 words, Randy Dewey, and David Tate. And they basically they decided to rob pimps and drug dealers, and so it's not dissimilar to the book. They appear to have what they considered ethical targets. It's obviously that's not where it ended up. They basically ended up trailing loads of black guys in flashy cars, trying to figure out whether they were pimps or drug dealers, because they had absolutely no idea how to get in touch with any pimps or drug dealers, and so they just ended up deciding to rob stores and banks. So ethics is difficult, isn't it? So fuck that. But they also ran a counterfeiting operation, and later in the Turner Diaries, they also start a counterfeiting business. But basically, the bills were really, really poor quality, and they ended up getting caught pretty early on, which led to them being on the radar and basically being caught. But the main objective of this group was to start a white supremacist revolution against the United States government, in which blacks, Jews, and race mixers and other perceived enemies would be exterminated. And they were so obviously very heavily inspired by the Turner Diaries. And they also felt that the American government was a Zionist a Zionist occupied government. So why did they kill this guy, Alan Berg? He was just a radio talk show host, and they murdered him in front of his home. They think it was a man called Bruce Pierce that did it, and I think that David Lane drove the car. They just basically wrote a list of people that they hated, and because he was a prominent anti-racist and he was Jewish, he was number 2 on their list. So in December 1984, authorities were able to track down Robert J. Matthews, the organization's leader, to a house in Whidbey Island, where he refused to surrender. He was suspected of wounding an FBI agent in a previous shooting in Oregon. And during a shootout, the house that he was in was ignited by incendiary flames and burnt down. And Robert J. Matthews was killed. But he's now considered to be a martyr by many white nationalists. And David Lane and Bruce Pierce, they both died in prison following the murder of Alan Berg, and they're now considered to be martyrs as well, basically. So, yeah, there are other crimes that are inspired by this book. In 1994, the Aryan Republican Army committed a string of armed bank robberies, at least 22. They were inspired both by the fictional The Order within the book and also the Order organization, which had also been inspired by the book. One statement they recorded encouraged watchers to read the book. Chevy Kehoe formed the white supremacist group, the Aryan People's Republic, after he read the Turner Diaries, and he eventually began a murder spree in which he killed 5 people before he was captured in an armed shootout with police in 1997. The German terrorist group, the National Socialist Underground, used a German translation of the Turner Diaries, which is illegal in that country, informing at least part of their ideological basis. Several members murdered at least 10 people in a decade-long murder spree, and a copy of the Turner Diaries was found on a computer used by the group, and most members had claimed to have read it. In 1996, Larry Wayne Shoemake committed a mass shooting against black people in Jackson, Mississippi, killing 1 and injuring 7. He both read the Turner Diaries and Hunter, which is the prequel. His wife stated that after Shoemake had read the Turner Diaries, he'd never been the same again. John William King was convicted of dragging James Byrd, an African-American, to death in Jasper, Texas in 1998. As King shackled Byrd's legs to his truck, he was reported to have said, "We're going to start the Turner Diaries early." David Copeland, the British neo-Nazi who killed 3 people in a bombing campaign against London's black and gay communities in 1999, quoted from the Turner Diaries whilst being interviewed by the police. Jacob D. Rabida, who attacked a gay bar in Massachusetts in 2006 before fleeing and killing his ex-girlfriend and a police officer before committing suicide, was found to have a copy of the book and other Nazi propaganda in his home. Paul Ross Evans, who attempted to bomb an abortion clinic in 2006, was found to have a copy of the book in his apartment. Peter Mangs, a serial killer who targeted immigrants in Sweden from 2009 to 2010, had read both the Turner Diaries and Hunter. Alexander Kopsteff stabbed 8 people in the Bolshabrahana synagogue. Kopsteff had been described as a racist skinhead and anti-Semitic neo-pagan. During a search of his house, the police found a copy of the Turner Diaries. Pavlo Lapshin, a Ukrainian who committed a racist murder in Britain in 2013, had an audiobook of the Turner Diaries and also a Russian translation of Hunter in his possession. White supremacist activist Fraser Glenn Miller Jr., who shot and killed 3 people at a Jewish community centre in 2014, had openly praised the book. And Zach Davis, who attempted to murder a Sikh man in a racist attack in Wales in 2015, was found to have a copy of the Turner Diaries and also a copy of Hunter in his house. So, and that's just the ones that are sort of widely known. There's a lot more. As I say, it's known to have inspired 200 murders. So,
it's crazy just kind of hearing you go through like how many examples there were.
Mm.
And you know, as we're talking about this is real life events and human beings that have been profoundly impacted and affected. And it's just how important this book was in shifting that kind of right wing tactic and strategy.
Yeah.
That rather than trying to build up, you know, what they used to say about the BNP was like trading in the boots and braces for like suits and ties.
Yeah.
But actually, the parts of the far right didn't want to kind of go down that route, and this is that real kind of just hearing how the impact that this book laying forth that strategy has is just mind-boggling.
Crazy.
I know that there's a brilliant series on Netflix, the title escapes me, about the German ones you mentioned. Who was that, Neil? The National Socialist, the underground
the
ones
National
that went
Socialist
underground.
Yeah,
for 10 years. The name escapes me, but there is a brilliant show about that on Netflix. And also just, you know, circle back to, I know David Copeland was mentioned there, kind of who did like Brixton, Brick Lane, the Admiral Duncan pub in Soho.
Nail Bar, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. And obviously, you know, he was like what we consider or call a lone wolf. But I think around that, he was someone that was inspired by, at that time, Combat 18. And Combat 18 was that, again, that real fetishization of violence, seeing itself as like this revolutionary kind of body and wanting to take on guerrilla tactics. So it's more than just these individuals and these groups. It's actually an entire culture and multiple organizations that this is kind of inspired, which is just frightening, really.
Well, it's like the chap from the SPLC said, William Pierce doesn't make bombs, he makes bombers. And he does it incredibly effectively. So anyway, so one of the stipulations of joining the order, to get back to the book, is that if you're ever caught, you've got to kill yourself. You can't allow yourself to be tortured for information. They're very, very strict on that. And they give Turner a cyanide capsule, which I found quite ironic, because it's like, that's very Nazi, isn't it? Like, you know, like, for Christ's sake, could you not think of like something else? But fair enough. Anyway, so we're now on to chapter 11, and it's November 28th, 1991. So it's a couple of weeks after Tupacalypse Now is released, and it's also 2 days after Ricky Martin's self-titled debut album hits the streets. So this is an incredibly exciting time for the underground. Yeah. Okay, and again, you can see why Turner might be cross. This next bit is ludicrous, I do warn you. So...
as opposed to you're like, to what? The bar's so low at this point, Neil.
As opposed to the plot of the book.
So a group of black men try and break into their hideout. And so...
Are they police?
No, they're not police. They're just some guys looking for a place to actually do heroin, apparently, which will become clear. But they decide to try a clever tactic to try and sort of not give the game away as who's inside. If you were in that position, what would you do to try and dissuade this group of black people from trying to get into your hideout?
Show my guns?
Huh?
No, show them my guns?
No, don't be silly. You'd talk black, wouldn't you?
What?
You know, shit, man, that honky must be messing my old lady. Got to be running cold upside down his head, you know, and that sort of thing. Genuinely, that's what they decide to do. The book says, Bill tried to discourage them in his best imitation ghetto accent. He shouted to the door, "Hey man, this place occupied. Move your ass out of here." And the two blacks... I'm so sorry. The two blacks jumped back from the door, startled. They began whispering to one another, and two other figures from the car joined them. Then a dialogue began between Bill and one of the blacks, and it went about like this. "We didn't know anybody was here, brother. We just looking for a place to shoot up. Well, now you knows, so git." Why you so hostile, my brother? Let us in. We got some stuff and some chicks. You by yourself? No, I ain't by myself, and I don't want no stuff. Yo, Jess, better move on, man. And then the editor puts in, note to the reader, the dialect of the Negroes in America contained many special terms relating to drug uses, which was endemic among them up to the end. Stuff meant heroin, an opium derivative, which was especially popular. To shoot up was to inject the heroin into a vein. Both the Negro's drug habits and much of his dialect spread to the white population of America during the period of government-enforced racial mixing in the last 5 years of the old era. Now, again, just despicably racist and horrific. But also, this is stupid, right? You have to remember, like, Nirvana are huge at this time. Alice in Chains are in the middle of recording Dirt, right? Okay, and heroin is seen as pretty cool, right? We're supposed to believe that Turner has lived through the New York Dolls, Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, Sid Vicious, the Stranglers, the Cure, the Lars, right? And he's got no idea about any of this stuff. Like, he's not a cool guy, I think we can establish. Anyway, so they invite all this gang in, and then they pull guns on them. When they were all stretched out on the concrete floor, face down, all 6 of them, we saw that we had 3 black males, 1 black female, and 2 white sluts. I shook my head in disgust at the sight of the 2 white girls, neither of whom appeared to be over 18. Keep that in mind. So they start to kill them, right, by caving their heads in one by one with a crowbar, right, whilst the others are held under gunpoint and told not to run. But Bill is doing it with a shovel, and the shovel skims off this black guy's head, and it chops into one of the white sluts, and she reacts in pain, and she makes a run for it. And so Turner shoots her, and they put the 6 corpses in the black guy's car, and then they go and abandon all the bodies in a black neighborhood. And Turner contemplates, I'm thinking over Saturday's events. What surprises me is that I feel no remorse or regret for killing those 2 white whores. Since 6 months ago, I couldn't imagine myself calmly butchering a teenage white girl, no matter what she had done. But I've become much more realistic about life recently.
What?
Well, you know, sometimes in life you have to butcher a teenage white girl. He goes on. I understand that the 2 white girls were with the blacks only because they had been infected with the disease of liberalism by schools and the churches and the plastic pop culture the system churns out for young people these days. Presumably, if they had been raised in a healthy society, they would have had some racial pride. Right. Just to remind everyone, the man who is describing butchering a teenage girl and not caring is the hero of this book. This is the man that the reader is supposed to aspire to and go, yeah, I think if push came to shove, I really do think I would butcher a teenage girl, even if she was white. That's what the message of the book is. It's stupid. Anyway, there's a rally that's denouncing racism, and about 200,000 people attend, half of them white. The rally was addressed by all the usual political prostitutes and pulpit prostitutes who issued pious calls for brotherhood and equality. Then the system trotted out one of their local Toms, who gave a rousing speech about stamping out the evil of white racism once and for all. After that, the skilled agitators of the Human Relations Council worked various sections of the crowd up into a real brotherhood frenzy, and these swarthy, kinky-haired little Jew boys with transistorized megaphones really knew their business. That might be an early Beastie Boys concert, if we're honest. Like, we don't necessarily know. Anyway, they had the mob screaming with real bloodlust for any white racist who might be unfortunate enough to fall into their hands, chanting, "Kill the racists," and other expressions of brotherly love. The mob began a march through downtown Chicago. Shoppers, workers and businessmen on the sidewalks were ordered by the black deputies to join in the march, and anyone who refused was beaten without mercy. And the crowd swelled, approaching 500,000 persons towards the end. The blacks with the armbands became more and more belligerent, and any white in the crowd who looked as if he wasn't chanting loudly enough was likely to be attacked. This just reminds me of like the persecution of the tolerant left having a go at us just for being racist, and Antifa in like causing violence and stuff like that just because we're like, you know, opposed to certain people living. It's so just biased.
Woe is me.
Yeah, isn't it? Anyway, so the mob drag a man from this bookshop that is rumored to sell racist books, and they beat him to death. And Turner says the faces of the white demonstrators were contorted with hatred for their own race. He seems to have forgotten that, like, just a couple of paragraphs ago, he butchered 2 teenage girls simply for knowing black people.
Yeah.
Right. Another incident in which the TV viewers were treated to close-up coverage was the killing of a cat. A large white alley cat was spotted by someone in the crowd who started the cry. Get the honky cat. Get the honky cat came down the cry.
What?
About a dozen demonstrators took off down an alley after the unfortunate cat. When they reappeared a few moments ago, holding up the bloody carcass of the cat, an exultant cheer went up from those in the crowd, near enough to see what had happened. This was sheer insanity. They're beating the cats and dogs.
I mean, if you didn't hate liberals before, now that they've killed the cat, it
is cruel to kill a cat, like, but you know, this is a man that's been involved in the murders of literally hundreds of people, like, including teenage children. Like, but hey ho. Chapter 12. December 4th, 1991. And this is 2 days before Cathedral released Forest of Equilibrium, which is the debut album. And Cathedral are a doom metal act, which is quite a stylistic departure for the singer, right? Who's Lee Dorian, because he was previously in the group Napalm Death, which we all know, obviously. Now, Dorian was part of Napalm Death as more of their early grindcore sort of bit. He was on half of Scum, and he's on the entirety from Enslavement to Obliteration. And after he left, Napalm Death went on to a more technical death metal sound with the new singer, Barney Greenway. Anyway, so Turner, he goes to visit Eliza and see if her friends will join in their cause. And he finds that some of them are actually already involved. Eliza's that girl, Elsa, sorry, is that girl. Isn't that the name of the woman from Frozen?
Frozen.
Yeah. Is it? That'd be a turn up for the books. A bit of lore if it turns out that it's the same person.
Is this part of the Disney universe?
It might be, yeah. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
If rumours are to be true.
We need to do a deep dive on that, yeah.
So they're apparently already involved in sort of like, you know, bombings of their own. So this is like sort of like a DIY underground, like almost like a sort of punk movement, but instead of music, they they kill people. The most interesting aspect of all of this is the proof that it represents the system's grip on the minds of the citizenry is less than total. Most Americans, of course, are still marching in mental lockstep with the high priests of the TV religion, but a growing minority have broken step and regard the system as the enemy. And he finds out that Elsa's parents were liberals, and they moved to a black neighborhood on purpose, even though, being one of the only 3 white girls in the area, Elsa is constantly at the threat of being raped, and it's even by the head teacher of her school makes it clear that he wants to rape her. Each day Elsa came home from school in tears and begged her parents to send her to another school. Her mother's response was to scream at her, slap her face, and call her a racist. If the black boys were bothering her, it was her fault, not theirs, and she should try harder to make friends with the black girls. Parents just don't understand, do they? This is obviously ridiculous. Anyway, so Elsa's mum thinks that reporting black people for any crimes is fascist. Even when her husband is brutally beaten and robbed, she refuses to call the police because obviously that would be racist. Turner then describes her like this, which is fucking creepy. Elsa had developed early her natural warmth and open...
Oh my God, what? What?
Elsa had developed early her natural warmth and open, uninhibited nature combined with her outstanding physical charms to produce a girl who had been extraordinarily attractive sexually even at 15. What is it with the fucking right wing being child molesters?
Always with the fascists. You just got to dig deep enough, and there's full of nonsense.
Why did he write that in the book?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Anyway, so Elsa runs away from her parents and she joins a commune. And she gets into a fight with another girl who pulls a knife. So fighting's not allowed in the commune. And so the group sell her to a Jew. And I'm very sorry, but the Jew's name is Cappy the...
Oh God! What?
This is like Sesame Street for racists.
Yeah.
Anyway, the rumors are that Cappy sells girls to a Satanist group, and that he's protected by the system, which is another bit of blood libel there, basically. So So we're now on to chapter 13. March 21st, 1993. So this is one day before Depeche Mode released Songs of Faith and Devotion. So that's something to look forward to. The hideout is raided and the group escape down a tunnel, but Turner stays to set an explosives, but it goes off early and he wakes up in the FBI headquarters and he's lost. He's only lost his fucking suicide capsule, hasn't he?
No.
Yeah. To be fair, because you probably sat there and thinking, that's a bit shit, you've really let the side down there, all this preparation and stuff like that. Like, to be fair, I understand why the group might be distracted, because one of the most important Nazi albums ever released had come out that February. So you can forgive them for not being on their A game. I think they would have been bumping The Sign by Ace of Base pretty fucking hard.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
So again, you can understand why they were distracted. So Turner's being tortured and he's approached by an IDF officer named Saul Rubin, who boasts that he extracted information from Germans during the war. Wasn't the other Jewish character called Saul as well? I can't remember. The guy who they killed him and then beat his wife to death with a jar of pickles.
He's running out of any kind of...
He's only got one stereotype.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this guy is thinking about killing Nazis. And Turner says, the apparently satisfying recollection brought another hideous grin to Rubin's face, and I could not suppress a shudder. I remembered the horrible photographs one of our members, who was a former army intelligence officer, had shown me years ago, of German prisoners who had had their eyes gouged out, their teeth pulled, their fingers cut off, and their testicles smashed by sadistic interrogators, many wearing US Army uniforms prior to their conviction and execution by military courts as war criminals. Oh, those poor war criminals.
Those poor...
The subsequent interrogation sessions were much worse, because the public show trial was planned for me, presumably in the Adolf Eichmann manner. Rubin avoided the eye gouging and finger cutting, which would have disfigured me, but the things he did were fully as painful. And then there's an editorial comment. Note to reader, Adolf Eichmann was a middle-level German official during World War II. 15 years after the war, in 39 BNE, he was kidnapped in South America by Jews. He was flown to Israel and made the central figure in an elaborately staged 2-year propaganda campaign to evoke sympathy for the non-Jewish world, for Israel, which is the only haven for persecuted Jews. After fiendish torture, Adolf Eichmann was displayed in a soundproof glass cage during a 4-month show trial in which he was condemned to death for crimes against the Jewish people. Now, needless to say, that's somewhat of a downplaying of Adolf Eichmann's actions there, including his admitted actions. So, again, just astonishingly ahistorical. But again, This is to peak things. This is like the stupid greatest story ever told. Because if someone says that to you with authority, you go, "Well, is that true?" And like no, it's not true. Like, but a lot of people won't check, and it builds up a picture and it reinforces concepts that they've already got, basically.
I mean, we effectively are reading through a piece of propaganda.
Oh, totally. And because it's Nazi propaganda, again, it makes me wonder why he puts bits like this in. During the torture sessions with the two FBI agents, who were always present as spectators, sometimes turned a bit pale, and when Rubin had his two black assistants thrust a long, blunt rub up into my rectum so that I was screaming and wriggling like a skewered pig. Dear Penthouse Forum.
Yeah.
I never thought that these letters were real until I met these two absolutely filthy women. Like, anyway, so he's tortured like this for a month. Oh my boys, my dear boys, a month. Heavens.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, he gives up everyone's names and confesses to all the bombings and all the stuff that he's done. And he's put in military jail, solitary confinement for over a year. But this just steals his resolve. So he's just like completely rolled on all his friends. After a mere month. Hey ho. Outside, the organisation plans a major bombing campaign on Houston's industrial areas and ports, and it leaves 4,000 dead. And ironically, this mass casualty event happens on September the 11th. And strangely, that's not the only time that September the 11th might be invoked by this particular story, but we'll come to that. Anyway, there's a prison escape. The organisation roll up in two buses and they break everyone out. And that's it. That's how Turner escapes. So we're on to chapter 14. Now, Turner, you must remember, had made an oath to kill himself. And so he's put on trial. And he's also chastised for visiting Elsa in Georgetown, because that's completely against protocol as well. But they're mostly concerned with him not killing himself when captured. But they do acknowledge that it was held for a long time, and the information that he gave caused problems for the organisation. So him rolling and ratting on his fucking friends has actually had consequences. And you were specifically warned against falling alive into the hands of the political police and were given means to avoid this. Yet you did fall into their hands and remained alive. The information they extracted for you seriously hampered the work of the organisation in this area and placed many of your comrades' lives in grave danger. Now, you must remember that they'd killed a man before simply for having doubts about whether they should kill innocent people or not. But for some reason, they decided to give Turner a second chance. But they're told that in the future, he must go on a suicide mission involving a bomb. Ironic. So a suicide bomber then. So that's one of the tools of creating this white utopia. Okay. All right. Well, we'll put a pin in that. Our decision has not been easy, but now you must hear it and you must abide by it. First, you must satisfactorily complete your extended period of probation. Then at some time after the end of that period, you will be permitted union, but only on the conditional basis, something we've never allowed before. The condition will be that you undertake a mission whose successful completion can reasonably be expected to result in your death. Unfortunately, we're all too often presented with the painful task of assigning such suicide missions to our members, and when we can find no other ways to complete a necessary goal. In your case, such a mission will serve two ends. If you complete it successfully, the act of completion will remove the condition from your union. Then, even though you die, you will continue to live in us and in our successors for as long as our order endures. Just as with any member who achieves union and then loses his life, and if by some chance you should survive your mission, you may then take your place in our ranks with no stain on your record. Do you understand everything that I've said? So just to explain, the union is the upper level of the order. It's like sort of being accepted into the holy monks and then your name's put in the book of martyrs. But yeah, I've got no idea why they're being so lenient to Turner. It doesn't really make any sense other than to sort of He's got plot armor. He's got literal plot armor, essentially. So the organisation shifts towards attacking economic targets that will basically make the public take a negative attitude to the system rather than fight the system itself. And this is in part to do with increasing numbers of casualties in the fight, but also due to the public, the bloody public's complacent attitude, which, you know, the complacent attitude is that they tolerate black people and Jewish people existing. Anyway, it was failing because the great bulk of white Americans were not responding to the situation in the way that we'd hoped they would. That is, we had counted on a positive, imitative response to our propaganda of the deed, but it was not forthcoming. We'd hoped that we'd set the example of resisting the system's tyranny, and others would resist too. We'd hoped that by making dramatic strikes against top system personalities and important system facilities, we would inspire Americans everywhere to initiate similar actions of their own. But for the most part, the bastards just sat on their asses. Sure, a dozen or so synagogues were burned, and there was an overall rise in the level of politically motivated violence, but it was generally misdirected and ineffective. Haven't you just complained that the reason you're having to change tactics is because yours was essentially misdirected and ineffective? Anyway, without organisation, such activities have little value unless they're widespread and can be sustained over a long period. And the system's response to the organisation irritated many people and caused a lot of grumbling. But it didn't even come close to provoking a rebellion. No, because you're just getting on people's fucking nerves. Read the room. Stop. Tyranny, we've discovered, just isn't all that unpopular among the American people. What is really precious to the average American is not his freedom or his honour or the future of his race, but his paycheck. He complained when the system began busing his kids to black schools 20 years ago, but he was allowed to keep his station wagon and his fiberglass speedboat, so he didn't fight. He complained when they took away his guns 5 years ago, but he still had his colour TV and his backyard barbecue, so he didn't fight. And he complains today when the blacks rape his woman at will and the system makes him show his identity pass to buy groceries or pick up his laundry, but he still has a full belly most of the time, so he won't fight. He hasn't an idea that wasn't put there by his TV set. He desperately wants to be well adjusted and to do and think and say exactly what he thinks is expected of him. He has become, in short, just what the system has been trying to make of him in these past 50 years or so. A mass man, a member of the great brainwashed proletariat, a herd animal, a true Democrat. That sounds just like a fucking Alex Jones speech.
Yeah.
But again, they not even consider the possibility that like the people are content because they're perfectly happy with the situation of having to, live alongside other races. But Turner's got another idea. He thinks that it's down to obviously Jewish propaganda. And at this point, they decide to make the public fear them rather than love them, which reminds me of a sort of particularly psychotic, spurned 13-year-old boy. Like, it's just stupid. We start wasting our resources in small-scale terror attacks and shifted to large-scale attacks on carefully selected economic targets, power stations, fuel depots, transportation facilities, food sources, key industrial plants. We do not expect to bring down the already creaky American economic structure immediately, but we do expect to cause a number of localized and temporary breakdowns, which will gradually have a cumulative effect on the whole public. And this basically causes blackouts, food shortages, and a few riots. These are just petulant children. They're just a fucking pain in the arse, basically. So, chapter 15, March 28th, 1993. So this is 2 days before Onyx released Back the Fuck Up. So, happy days. The organisation makes a load of counterfeit money, which it both spends and also floods the country with to cause more disruption. And they do this from a legal printing shop they run. And Turner also whiles away the days making bombs that can go through metal detectors and x-rays without detection. And they also talk about you can't basically buy food without ID, so you make fake ones, which is this ID cards, mark of the beast conspiracy, essentially. Now, members are being found with 7 bullets in their heads and their hands tied behind their backs, so members of the organisation. From our contacts inside one of the federal police agencies, we learned that our people are being killed by 2 groups, a special Israeli assassination squad and an assortment of mafia hitmen under contract to the government of Israel. Where both these groups are concerned, US police have been given a hands-off order by the FBI. Note to reader, the mafia was a criminal confederation composed primarily of Italians and Sicilians, but usually masterminded by Jews, which flourished in the United States in the 8 decades prior to the Great Revolution. This was a recent misrepresentation that Candace Owens was also putting around. And this is a thing that people like to spread, the idea that the mafia was actually Jewish. And there were Jewish people involved. Meyer Lansky, Mickey Cohen, Dutch Schultz, Bugsy Siegel, Harold Rothman. But, there are also a huge amount of Italians, like Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Vito Genovese, all Italian. So this idea that it was a Jewish thing is nonsense. Started in Sicily, for crying out loud. But anyway.
But again, the way you mentioned Candace Owens there, it's like all these ideas, how virulent anti-Semitism, how common it is. Again, I never thought, 10, 15 years ago, I never thought going on Twitter, which is now X, seeing, the speeches of Hitler transcribed into English and people sharing it, going, "Oh, I think he's actually
making a lot of sense here."
And just the whole kind of protocols of the elders of Zion all coming back up. It's like it's so coming through. So it's again just interesting seeing you link that to the present day.
So anyway, they respond by attacking a nightclub where this mafia underboss is having a party, and they end up killing 60 mafia members and 340 innocent bystanders. So anyway, again, they're building all these bombs. So Turner goes to this shop to get 200 watches, which he's going to use as bomb timers, and he plans to just run off, but they use a security door, and so he threatens the owner of the shop by saying, "Get this door open now, or I'll pay for these watches with hot lead." Powerfully shit.
The dialogue is about as good as the plot, really.
And the characters as well. The characters are all paper thin. We know absolutely nothing about them other than they've been motivated by liberal fucking stupid equality, to the point where they feel that murdering people en masse is probably okay.
It's justified here.
So we're now on chapter 16. It's April the 10th, 1993. So this is 4 days after Tool have released Undertow. So good times. And the organisation prints $10 million in fake notes, and Turner plans to destroy a nuclear power plant. And so he goes on a tour to see it, if he could spot a weakness. And all this reminds me of is that bit in Austin Powers where he goes to Dr. Evil's lair and goes on the tour of the company. And that's what they do. And he decides that the best plan is to sneak radioactive material and explosives inside in a walking stick, which will destroy the core and make the plant unusable. And he explains how their mission will change society. We're forging the nucleus of a new society, a whole new civilization which will rise from the ashes of the old. And it is because our new civilization will be based on an entirely different worldview than the present one that it can only replace the other in a revolutionary manner. There is no way a society based on Aryan values and an Aryan outlook can evolve peacefully from a society which has succumbed to Jewish spiritual corruption. Well, don't bother then. That's just the simplest answer. Just don't bother. It's too hard. Leave it alone. Looking at the events of the past 31 months from this viewpoint, considering our constructive tasks of building a new social nucleus rather than a purely destructive war against the system, it appears to me that our initial strategy of hitting system leaders instead of the general economy was not really as bad a way to start as I'd thought. It shaped the character of the battle from the beginning as us versus the system, rather than us versus the economy. The system responded repressively to protect itself from our attacks and caused it to isolate itself to a certain extent from the public. When we weren't doing much but assassinating congressmen, federal judges, secret policemen and media masters, the people themselves did not feel especially threatened, but they resented the inconveniences caused by all the system's new security measures. If we'd hit the economy from the beginning, the system could have more easily painted the struggle as one of us versus the people, and it would have been easier for the media to convince the public of the necessity of collaborating with the system against a common menace, namely us. So our initial error in strategy has providentially made it easier for us to recruit now when we're deliberately working to make things as uncomfortable for everyone as we can. Two things. One, that is exactly what your plan is. It is you against the people. in order to get them to mistrust the system. And also, this just reminds me of like Reform and Tories and stuff like that, creating problems that they promised to solve, like immigration, like by closing down legal asylum routes, or creating tension, stoking tension, and then saying, well, we'll stop this tension by essentially mass deportations and stuff like that. It's exactly the same. Anyway, Turner is still a member of the Order for some reason, despite his betrayal. But he has a bit of a problem. You see, a group of anti-racists turn up at their shop, right? And he can't just speak through the walls. Right? Okay, so what's he going to do here to put them off the scent? What would you do if you're a member of a terrorist organisation that was faced with having to interact with a group of anti-racists?
Speak in anti-racist speech.
Sort of, yeah. You'd pretend to be Jewish.
That was going to be my first.
Then there was a delegation from the local Human Relations Council which visited the shop yesterday. 4 blacks and a sick white male. And I don't think they mean that in the way that the kids say. All wearing council armbands. They came into our print shop. They wanted to put a big poster up in the shop window, the same kind one sees everywhere now, urging citizens to help fight racism by reporting suspicious persons to the political police and leave a container for donations on the counter. Carol was behind the counter at the time, and she told them in effect to go to hell. That, of course, wasn't the right thing to do under the circumstances. They would have reported us to the political police if I hadn't heard the commotion and intervened. I came up the basement stairs with what I hope was a convincingly Jewish expression on my face.
Oh no!
And then, but you got to remember, he's a master impressionist as well. I apologise. This is how it's written. And I went into...
No. Give me a second.
and so I went into a, so, what's going on here already routine. I laid it on thick, but not too thick. Fucking hell. You just said, so what's going on here? Like, I hope so that they would get the message. The shop manager here was himself a member of a minority group, a very special minority group, and could hardly be suspected of harbouring any hostility for the Human Relations Councils or their commendable efforts. The head, N-word, began complaining indignantly to me about Carol's rebuff. I cut him off with an impatient wave of my hand and directed a look of mock shock at Carol. Of course, I said. Leave your collection box here. It's for a good cause. But no window, spelt with a V, no window poster. Not enough room. I wouldn't even let my cousin Aby put one of his United Jewish Appeal posters there. Come, I show you where. As I effusively led the delegation towards the door, I ordered Carol back to work in my best Simon Legree manner. Yes, Mr. Bloom, she said meekly. Out on the sidewalk, I overcame my revulsion whilst I chummily put an arm around the shoulders of the black spokesman and directed his attention to go to a store directly across the street. We don't have so many customers here, I explained, but my good friend Solly Feinstein has many people going in and out. He has a big window and will be happy for your poster to be there. You can put him right under where it says Sol's Pawn Shops and everyone will see it. And be sure to leave him a donation box. Two donation boxes. He has a big store. They all seemed pleased to be my friendly suggestion and started across the street. But the white, a sorry-looking specimen with pimples and an imitation afro, hesitated, turned to me and said, maybe we ought to get that girl's name. Some of the things that she said to us sounded defiantly racist. Don't waste your time on her, I responded, brusquely dismissing his suspicion with a wave. She's just a dumb shishka. She talks that way to everybody. I will get rid of her soon. Right? So far, they've pretended to be black and they've pretended to be Jewish using their voices. And I bet you're thinking, there's no way this could get any stupider than this.
No, I'm not even thinking that. I'm not thinking it because I just know it must do. But that whole time I'm just thinking you sound more like a German person
sound like I was,
pretending to know a bunch of Jewish people.
I sounded like Hair Flick from a Lower Low. But so anyway, chapter 17. April 20th, 1993, Major Williams tells Turner that there'll be an attack on the system in the coming months. So they're all a bit panicked. But it's all right, because this grim news is offset by the recent release of Get a Grip by Aerosmith, which contained the singles Eat the Rich, Crying, Crazy, and Living on the Edge. The video for which starred Edward Furlong, and he takes a gun to school in this video. And I remember watching that and thinking, fucking cool. This is probably not the message that they wanted. Also, Pork Soda by Primus came out that month. The organisation launched a mortar attack on the Israeli embassy and killed nearly 300 people. But during the attack, an Israeli bodyguard runs out and kills 9 tourists with a machine gun. And he's obviously let go because he's Jewish, and accusing a Jew of a crime is racist, which is political correctness gone mad.
Gone mad.
So they decide to use a mortar to attack the power plant. And Turner visits a scientist called Harrison to ask him to get radioactive material. But he flatly refused. It's out of the question, he said. It would jeopardize my entire career. Dr. Harrison, I replied, I'm afraid you do not understand the situation. We're at war. The future of our race depends on the outcome of this war. As a member of the organization, you're obliged to put your responsibility to our common effort ahead of all personal considerations. You are subject to the organization's discipline. Harrison turned white and began stammering, but I continued relentlessly. If you continue to refuse my request, I am prepared to kill you on the spot. Our attitude is those whose only concern is to enjoy life in these times of trial for our race do not deserve life. Let them die. And yet he was spared, right? Okay. So it makes no sense. Also, if you kill this guy, you can't get the stuff that you need, to be quite honest. Like, this whole plot is an impotent man-child's revenge fantasy. And like the irony of it is that they just don't have the self-awareness to realize that the problem in society is you. You're the fucking problem in this society, right? Okay. It's classic. I've been rejected by society, so I will demonize and reject that society rather than grow as a person. Anyway, so Turner goes to New York to check on a chapter there who have loads of weapons. We stepped out of the elevator and I gasped in surprise. In the huge low-ceilinged room, more than 100 feet on the side, there were immense heaps of every sort of military weapon. Automatic rifles, machine guns, flamethrowers, mortars, and literally thousands of cases of ammunition, grenades, explosives, detonators, boosters, and spare parts. I don't know how the floor supported it all. And these have been acquired by basically pretending to be mafia and buying them from corrupt black soldiers on army bases. The black soldiers, it mentions several things. One, they're expert at theft. And two, they're never questioned or scrutinized because obviously that would be racist. Chapter 18, May 23rd, 1993, which is only a week before Propaganda released How to Clean Everything. Turner trains people to make bombs, and they destroy the Texas telephone service, and he explains in an incredibly boring way. First, we thoroughly pumped one of our local members who had formerly worked in the building as an operator. She described the layout for us, giving the approximate location of the rooms on each floor, which held the automatic switching equipment. With her help, we made a rough map showing the stairwells, the employees' entrances, the guard room, and other pertinent details. Then we prepared our equipment. I decided that we would use surgical precision on this job rather than brute force. Besides, we didn't have a sufficiently large quantity of explosives for the brute force demolition job. What we did have were 3 500-foot spools of PETN-filled detonating cord and a little over 20 pounds of dynamite. I broke our 8 activists up into 4 two-man teams. 1 man in each team carried a sawed-off, auto-loading shotgun, and others carried demolition equipment. 3 of the teams were assigned to 3 floors of switching equipment, 1 to the floor. Each of these teams were given 1 of the spools of detonating cord, a 5-gallon can of homemade napalm-like mixture of gasoline and liquid soap, and a delayed-action detonator. The 4th team was given a 20-pound satchel charge and a homemade thermite grenade, and assigned to the transformer vault in the basement. The dynamite would wreck the transformers, and the thermite would set off the transformer oil afire. 2 things. 1, fuck me, they don't half make terrorism boring. And thermite, predictive programming. Ooh.
Oh.
Afterwards, Turner reflects. The accounts of the operation in this afternoon's local newspaper indicated that 24 or so employees who were in the building managed to get out safely, all except the guard that I locked in the closet who died of smoke inhalation. I feel guilty about that, but it couldn't be helped. We were in a hurry. So the system responds by putting tanks on the streets and enforcing police state style traffic checkpoints. So it's all gone very Alex Jones. A member gets caught stealing dynamite, and during his interrogation he gets killed trying to get the sheriff's gun. The sheriff's glory was short-lived, however. The evening of the day of our member was killed, the sheriff appeared in a televised news interview, boasting of the blow he had struck in the name of law, order, and equality, and pompously warning that he would treat with equal ruthlessness any other racists who fell into his hand. When he arrived home that night after his TV interview, he found his wife on the living room floor with her throat cut. 2 days later, his patrol car was ambushed. His bullet-riddled body was found in its burned-out wreckage. That's a bit fucking much, isn't it? But Turner says that this is justified because in the Talmud and the Torah, Jews refer to non-Jews as cattle and women as shishkas, which means abomination. I thought it was a type of kebab, actually, but it's not. It's a different spelling. A, the sheriff wasn't Jewish. And B, we still hear this fucking bullshit today. This idea that the Jesus is burning in shit in hell, says the Torah and stuff like that. It's like, gives a fuck. Like, A, it's not true, and B, like, you do understand that that's what religions are all about. Saying that other religions are wrong. That's sort of the point of religion, right? Okay, like, so like this religion disagrees with my religion. Of course it fucking does. Like, it's a religion. Like, people like, never mind. Chapter 19. June the 27th, 1993. And this is 5 days after Morbid Angel released Covenant. And this is a strange one because this becomes like a real milestone in death metal. And it's partly due to the singer, which I'm sure we all know, God of Emptiness. This got played on Beavis and Butthead, which was also sort of really popular at the time. But the weird thing was that when the album came out, Kerrang only gave it 1K out of a potential 5. Crazy times. So Turner is sent to Los Angeles, where he stays at Cayuga Park, which is actually where the Manson family stayed in the building that became known as the Yellow Submarine. But that's for another time. And a simultaneous attack on more than 600 military and civilian targets all over the country has been scheduled for next Monday morning, July the 4th, which is also the day before Björk releases her debut album, Debut. The danger in not constantly escalating the war is that the system will find a new equilibrium and the public will become accustomed to it. The only way to maintain the present influx of recruits is to keep a substantial portion of the public psychologically off balance, keep them at least half convinced that the system isn't strong enough and efficient enough to wipe us out, that we are an irresistible force, that sooner or later the war will sweep them too up in it. Otherwise, the worthless bastards will take the easy way out by just sitting back to see what happens. The American people have already proved that they can shamelessly continue their crass pursuit of pleasure under the most provocative conditions imaginable, so long as the new provocations are introduced gradually enough for them to be accustomed to them. That's our greatest danger in not acting. Two things. One, very similar to the totalitarian tiptoe, but also what the organisation is doing there is the same tactics of demonisation that we saw during the Iraq War, and that we're going to start seeing now that Israel has started attacking Iran. They're using exactly the same tactics, but they're using them on the population. This idea that maybe the government isn't strong enough to protect us from the terrorists. So maybe the government needs to be it's that psychological fear. It's just bizarre that the same tactic can be used by essentially both sides. Chapter 20. July the 7th, 1993. And as the planet reels from the release the day before of Vagina Diner by Akinyele. Looks like we'll be here till morning, so I can take an hour or so to record the events of the last few days. This is really a swanky place. It's a penthouse apartment for which we can see most of the Los Angeles, which is why we're using it as a command post, but the luxury is unbelievable. Satin sheets, genuine fur bedspreads, gold-plated bathroom fixtures. I think it's Donald Trump's house. Wall taps, which dispense bourbon, scotch, and vodka in every room. And also in every room, huge framed pornographic photos on the wall. Why? The apartment belonged to one Jerry Siegelbaum. Oh, right, that's right.
Here we go.
A business agent for the local municipal...
I was going to say Sean Combs then.
Yeah. A business agent for the local municipal employees union and a star subject to the dirty photos of the walls. Looks like he preferred blonde Gentile girls, although his partner in one picture is... And he's with a young boy in another. Some representatives of the workers he was. I hope someone moves him from the hallway outside soon. There's been no air conditioning since Monday, and he's beginning to stink pretty bad. So they've killed him, obviously, but that ties into the often not restated and incorrect idea that Jews are behind porn. Even the essentially Jewish decadence introducing pornography and homosexuality and ideas of trans people was the trigger that set Germany off, which is just, again, silliness, basically.
And again, you see that that's become so prevalent now. I keep seeing or have seen kind of on Twitter, people say Weimar problems need Weimar solutions.
Fucking hell.
Which is just a frightening, again, how the normalization, people wanting fascism.
Oh, yeah.
Wanting it brought back.
Well, there's 2 points. One, they think that basically, they'll be part of the power group. And two, because life is so fucking shit, you don't need much to sort of draw people into an ideology where I'm superior to that person. I can look down on that person just simply by existing and having been born in this particular body. Well, that's quite powerful if you don't feel that you've got anything. And that's what people exploit, which is sad. Anyway, the power is out all over Los Angeles. At 2 o'clock Monday morning, more than 60 of our combat units struck simultaneously throughout the Los Angeles area, while hundreds of other units hit targets all across the country from Canada to Mexico and from coast to coast. Not the radio show. Our initial assaults cut off all water and electrical power to the metropolitan area, knocked out the main airports, and made all the major freeways impassable. We took out the telephone exchanges and blew up every gasoline storage depot. The harbour area has been almost a solid mass of flame for 4 days now. We seized at least 15 police stations. Mostly we just took their weapons, destroyed their communications equipment and whatever vehicles were not on patrol at the time, and then pulled out. But apparently our people are still holed up in several police buildings and are using them as local command posts. The military didn't respond to this because apparently by this time the organisation has got supporters in really high levels. The intra-military conflict started with the units commanded by our sympathisers on one side and those loyal to the system, by far the majority, on the other side. Another aspect to the conflict soon developed and overshadowed the first, however: black against white. Military units commanded by pro-organisation officers began disarming all black military personnel as soon as we launched our Monday morning attack. The excuse they used was that black militants had launched a mutiny in other units and their orders were from higher up were to disarm all blacks to prevent the spread of the mutiny. Generally, white servicemen were ready and willing to believe that story and did not need to be told twice to turn their guns against the blacks in their units. Those few whose liberal predispositions made them hesitate were shot on the spot. In other units, our enlisted personnel simply began shooting any blacks they saw in uniform and then deserted to units commanded by our sympathisers. The blacks, naturally enough, reacted in such a way as to make the story about a black mutiny come true. Even in those units commanded by pro-system officers, heavy fighting between blacks and whites broke out. This implies that racism is a natural state. That's what they're trying to get across in that, which obviously it isn't. It's just sickening. So the civilian population can't leave LA, but they've got no water or electricity. And Turner says that looting is only happening in the black areas. So he goes looking for fuel, and when he sees black people, he shoots them. And white, because they're trying to attack him. And all the white people do is just beg for food. Chapter 21, July the 11th, 1993, which is the day before The Sound of Speed, which is a compilation of rarities and B-sides from the Jesus and Mary chain, which is very good, is released. The nuclear power plant is destroyed. Hooray! The military is increasingly sympathetic to the organisation, partly due to infiltrating it. 40,000 soldiers are on their side, and they seize Vandenberg Air Force Base, which has all the country's nuclear missiles. So that's a turn up for the books, isn't it? In some of the worst areas of civilian rioting, primarily because of the disruption of food supplies, the government is using special military units made up of non-whites only. They've rushed some of these all N-word units into the border area around our California enclave. The closest such unit seems to be Barstow, about 100 miles northwest of here. Some white refugees from there have been trickling into our area, and their reports are pretty sickening. Mass rape and terror from the black troops who are lording it over the local whites. It's astonishing these black people have got any time to do anything else. So, like, the amount of time they spend raping and looting in this book is crazy. I hate to hear of such things happening to the white people, but the reaction can only be favourable to us. And it's good that we've forced the system to show its lack of confidence in the loyalty of the white population, and it's dependent on non-white elements. So the organisation goes to these mixed race areas and starts rounding up and shooting black people, or putting them in camps. Later, the blacks organised hunting parties and made raids into white areas. In the cellar of one of these black apartment buildings, we found a scene of indescribable horror, attesting to the success of these raids. I and a crew of my men noticed a commotion in front of the building as we finished checking the looted shambles of an adjacent warehouse and came out onto the street. A group of GIs milling around the entrance were obviously distressed about something. One of them came running out of the apartment building and began retching and vomiting on the sidewalk. Then another, with a grim expression on his face, led a young white girl out of the building. She was about 10 years old. Naked, filthy, and in an obvious state of shock. As soon as I pushed my way into the building, I recoiled from the horrible stench which permeated the place. Putting a handkerchief over my nose and mouth didn't seem to help, but with the aid of the flashlight, I descended the cellar stairs past two more GIs who were coming up. In the arms of one of them was a silently staring white child of about 4, alive, but apparently too weak to walk. The cellar, which was illuminated by 2 kerosene lanterns hanging from the steam pipes, had been converted into a human slaughterhouse by the blacks. The floor was slippery, with half-congealed blood. There were washtubs full of stinking entrails, and others filled with severed heads. 4 tiny human haunches dangled overhead from wires. On a wooden workbench beneath one of the lanterns, I saw the most terrible thing I've ever seen. It was the butchered and partially dismembered body of a teenage girl. What, like the one you fucking killed earlier? Never mind. Her blue eyes stared emptily at the ceiling, and her long golden hair was matted with the blood which rushed from the gaping wound in her throat. I retched and stumbled back in the stairs and out into the light again. I could not make myself go back into that awful cellar, but I sent 2 of my crew with cameras and lights down there to make a thorough photographic record. The photos will be useful for troop indoctrination. From one of the GIs outside the building, I learned that parts of at least 30 children, all white, had been found in the cellar, along with the 2 that were still alive. They had been tied to a pipe in one corner. In the rear courtyard of the building was an improvised barbecue grill and a large pile of small human bones, thoroughly gnawed. Lunacy. Just utter lunacy. Also, again, like, you know,
what a fucking turn that took,
isn't it? Like that, it's almost fetishization of sort of like little white dead girls as well. Like, I mean, I understand what he's trying to sort of convey, but he's gone too far to the point where he's writing it as if he enjoys it. He's writing it like a horror book, like by which I mean, like, you know, like a sort of splatterpunk gore book. So
yeah.
You know, again, it says more about the author, really.
Fetishizing.
Right, and again, I'm very, very sorry that he's got as grim as this. Trust me, we shall rise again. Some white people organise gangs to protect themselves. Most of all, though, many of them seem to be convinced that any effort at self-defence would be racist, and they fear being thought of as racist or thinking of themselves in that way more than they fear death. Even when gangs of blacks take their children away or rape their women before their eyes, they offered no significant resistance. Really sick. That's fucking stupid. Absolutely stupid. But hey ho. Chapter 22, July the 19th, 1993. This is the day that Smashing Pumpkins released Siamese Dream, and it's the day before Black Sunday by Cypress Hill comes out. Fucking awesome.
Incredible time.
Amazing time.
But Turner is still quite miserable. Even though they're rounding up black people.
So today is not the greatest day.
No, not for him, not for Turner. No. And also they refuse to disarm. But so they're rounding up the black people and they're forcing them to march out to LA and they're marching them off a cliff. That's what they're doing. They also hire some black people to steal cars before killing them because obviously blacks are expert at stealing in this uniform. And and also they get these black people to round up sick and infirm people of colour who can't go on these death marches, and they're just simply executed, which is also bollocks because like they've also spent the entire book stealing things, producing counterfeit money, and committing all sorts of fucking crimes. Like not without mentioning the mass murder that they're doing, like and causing a civil war. All of those things, like starving people to death, depriving people of electricity. Like all these crimes are happening because of the things that they've done as well. So, hey ho.
Again, there's no logic.
No logic, no self-awareness. It's all the ends justify the means. I've been surprised to see how callous our volunteer blacks are towards their own people. Some of the older blacks who haven't been able to fend for themselves are obviously near the point of death from starvation and dehydration. Yet our volunteers handle them so roughly and pack them so tightly into the cars that it makes me flinch to watch them. You're walking them off fucking cliffs. And also, you killed a teenage girl earlier because she had a black friend. When one overloaded Cadillac started in the eastbound freeway with a lurch this morning, an ancient Negro lost his grip and fell off the roof, landing headfirst on the pavement and crushing his skull like an egg. The blacks who had just loaded the car roared with laughter. It was apparently the funniest thing they've seen in a long time. He's literally a terrorist who's murdered hundreds of people, hundreds of civilians. So he really doesn't have the grounds. Anyway, what we've accomplished so far is really quite remarkable, though. We've moved out approximately 500,000 non-whites who couldn't possibly have made it on foot. Each and every one of these is now the responsibility of the system to feed and hose and house and clothe and keep out of trouble. Together with the 7 million or so able-bodied blacks and Chicanos we're sending them, that's quite a responsibility. He later found out that they're not sending them out of the area; they're walking them off a cliff. White people flood to LA because they hear about this sort of burgeoning white utopia. But they have a problem distinguishing who is really white and who might be secretly Jewish or have secretly sort of, some sort of mixed race background. And so they solve this problem by simply killing anybody that doesn't fit their standard of whiteness.
Okay. How do they test this?
They just sort of look at them and decide. Better to deal with them now as soon as we get our hands of them. I have a suspicion that their trip into that canyon north of here will be a one-way affair. So, also, white people immediately start moving into the abandoned black areas, and they improve the neighborhoods. They repair things. They plant vegetable gardens. They make everything look nice. They decorate. They put up curtains.
It's an Aryan utopia. Basically.
Absolutely. It's described as fresh flowers on the sills, which were formerly occupied only by empty liquor bottles.
Yeah.
Chapter 23. August the 1st, 1993, which is a day before the ill-fated second album from Criss Cross, Da Bomb, is released. And maybe that was what caused this terrible thing to happen. Today has been the day of the rope, a grim and bloody day, but an unavoidable one.
Here we go.
Tonight, for the first time in weeks, it is quiet and totally peaceful throughout all of Southern California. But the night is filled with silent horrors from tens of thousands of lampposts, power poles, and trees throughout this vast metropolitan area. The grisly forms hang. In the lighted areas, one sees them everywhere. Even the street signs at intersections have been pressed into surface, and at practically every street corner I passed this evening on my way to HQ, there was a dangling corpse. 4 at every intersection. hanging from a single overpass. Only about a mile from here is a group of about 30, each with an individual placard around its neck, bearing the printed legend, "I betrayed my race." 2 or 3 of that group had been decked out in academic robes before they were strung up, and a whole batch are apparently faculty members from the nearby UCLA campuses. So, what the Day of the Rope is any white people who were sympathetic to the cause of black people are hung. That's what the Day of the Rope is. Now, bizarrely, right, there's a film that came out in the sort of late 80s, early 90s called Prayer of the Roller Boys, which stars Corey Haim, and it's about gangs of roving street thugs who all go around exclusively on rollerblades. And in that, the cult leader has a thing called the Day of the Rope, which is a plan to sterilize all men on the planet. Why they decided to call it that, I've got absolutely no idea. But in the Turner Diaries, the Day of the Rope refers to the hanging of all whites sympathetic to non-whites. And women are not spared. The first thing I saw in the moonlight was the placard with its legend in large block letters, "I defiled my race." Above the placard lay the horribly bloated, purplish face of a young woman, her eyes wide open and bulging, her mouth agape. Finally, I could make out the thin vertical line of rope disappearing into the branches above. Apparently the rope had slipped a bit, or the branch to which it was tied had sagged until the woman's feet were resting on the pavement, giving the uncanny appearance of the corpse standing upright of its own volition. I shuddered and quickly went on my way. There were many thousands of hanging female corpses like that in the city tonight, all wearing identical placards around their necks. They are the white women who were married to or living with blacks, with Jews, or with other non-white males. It's astonishing. Those hanged for betraying the race war, for betraying their race, were the politicians, the lawyers, the businessmen, the TV newscasters, the newspaper reporters and editors, the judges, the teachers, the school officials, the civic leaders, the bureaucrats, the preachers, and all others who, for reasons of career or status or votes or whatever, help promote or implement the system's racial program. And the organisation then starts massive home invasions at 3 a.m. and everyone is either rounded up and hung, and the non-whites who are being found to be hidden are death marched off the cliff. The hangings take in total about 10 hours. I and my men were in the thick of things all day, mostly handling logistics. When the execution squads began running out of ropes, we stripped several miles of wire from power poles to use it in its place, and we also rounded up hundreds of ladders. And they round up Hollywood actors and they take them to be executed at City Hall. And there's a sort of thing about Hollywood being both woke and Jewish. So the trouble was that many of the big shots were arriving in City Hall already more dead than alive. The troops on our transport trucks were really giving them a working over. One famous actress, a notorious race mixer who had starred in several large-budget interracial love epics, had lost most of her hair, an eye, and several teeth, not to mention all her clothes before the rope was put around her neck. She was bruised. She was a bruised and bloody mess. I wouldn't have known who she was if I hadn't asked. What I wondered was the point in publicly hanging her if the public couldn't recognise her and draw a proper inference from between her former behaviour and her punishment. So it's not the killing that's wrong. It's that people won't be able to know who's been killed. But he's also thoroughly disgusted when he sees others beating a prisoner to death before they're hanged, before they're able to be hanged, because he says that this is a lack of discipline, which he likens to the behaviour of Ugandans and Puerto Ricans.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Then he described
it's a strange, spectacle of revenge, isn't it?
Oh, that's exactly what it is. It's his own personal revenge fantasy with a smattering of sexism, like child molestation and fetishization of the murder of young white girls.
But hearing this term, Day of the Rope, does sometimes make me think of draining the swamp that was used a lot in America, and then this Nuremberg 2.0 that a lot of the anti-vaxxers would use, right? Like this day of we get our revenge.
Even hang Mike Pence. There's people that have made academics that have made the direct connection between the Day of the Rope and the people wanting to hang Mike Pence, the symbology of it and whatnot. So he describes further arrests, and again, we haven't had any casual sexism for a bit, so it's all right. We've got some coming. The last
there's still time.
Yeah, plenty of time. The last was a white girl, about 19, a bit flabby, but still pretty. The shootings had calmed her down enough so that she was no longer screaming racist pigs at the soldiers. But when the preparations for her hanging shortly thereafter awakened her to her own fate, she became hysterical, informed that she was about to pay the price for defiling her race by living with a black lover. The girl wailed, "But why me?" As the rope was knotted around her neck, she blubbered out, "I was only doing what everyone else was doing. Why are you picking on me? It's not fair. What about Helen? She was sleeping with him too." At this last outcry before the girl's breath was cut off forever, one of the other girls, presumably Helen, in the group of now silent spectators on the lawn, shrank back in terror. Of course, no one answered the girl's question, "Why me?" The answer is simply that her name happened to be on our list, and Helen's didn't. There's nothing fair about that, or unfair either. The girl who was hanged deserved what she got. Helen probably deserves the same fate, and she's undoubtedly suffering the torments of the damned now, in fear that she eventually will be found out and forced to pay the price that her friend did. At no point did they just consider the idea that she might have just liked, or I don't know, even loved her black partner. The idea is that basically people only do things to go along with trends or to fit in. And it's because essentially this is still coming from a perspective that non-whites are not really human beings. They're like accessories, or
and that everyone's been brainwashed.
Yeah,
by
the fucking irony, isn't it? Like, Turner reflects. The melancholy aspect of this episode is epitomised in the girl's lament. "I was only doing what everyone else was doing." That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it is true enough that had others not set a bad example for her, the girl would not have become a race criminal. She paid as much for the sin of others as for her own. Now I realise more than ever how essential it is that we instill in all our people a new moral basis, a new set of fundamental values, so that they will no longer be morally adrift like the unfortunate girl was. They've just murdered her. They've just murdered her. And he's unironically saying, like, where's the morality in people? That's so immoral that we have to hang a teenage girl, like, in the middle of the night from a street sign because she happened to have a black boyfriend. But again, that sort of shit, the lack of self-awareness, the first time I read this, I was like, hang on, is this actually satire? It's not. It's just stupid. This total lack of any healthy or natural morality was brought home to me again just before noon. We were hanging a group of about 40 land developers and real estate. It's again the same thing. We were hanging 40 land developers and real estate brokers outside the offices of the Los Angeles County Fair Housing Association. They had all participated in a special program which made lower mortgage rates available for racially mixed families buying homes in predominantly white neighborhoods. One of the realtors was a sturdy, handsome fellow of about 35 with a blonde crew cut. He was vehemently defending himself. "Hell, I never agreed with any of this race-mixing crap. It makes me sick to my stomach to see these mixed families with their mongrel brats. But a man has to earn a living. I was told by the head building inspector in the county that it would be a lot easier to avoid building code violations for those realtors who went along with this special mortgage program." Without realizing it, he was telling us that a bigger income came before racial loyalty in his set of values. Something which is unfortunately true also of a great many who are not hanged today. Well, he made his choice freely, and he hardly deserves any sympathy. He then reveals that there's a civilian labour battalion which are cutting down the corpses before they start to smell, but this will take about 4 days because they've hanged over 60,000 people.
Whoa.
Yeah, remember that bit at the beginning where they were like, we should really not murder that many people and probably be ethical about our targets. That's now grown to destroying a nuclear power plant and murdering over 60,000 people, not to mention the millions of people of colour that they've walked over cliffs. Chapter 24. August 8th, 1993. And this is 2 days before Varg Vikernes of Bertsum will murder Euronymous of Mayhem. For those who don't know, Euronymous is the guitar player of Mayhem is often credited with creating this sort of new guitar sound where you really focus on the sort of the high pitch notes and you sort of scrape the pick down in a way that it was very, very different and very, very sort of new. But purists will tell you that like Snorrucker of Thorns actually invented this guitar sound with the Grimlick demo. And I think they have a point, but it would be wrong to say that Euronymous didn't popularize that sound. Interestingly, when Varg travelled to kill Euronymous, Snorrucker was actually in the car with him because he was insane and he wanted to show Euronymous some new guitar riffs. Anyway, I digress. The organization is now running Southern California, which means that like in this universe, I want to know what happened to NoFX and Bad Religion and the Circle Jerks and the Germs and the Offspring. I strongly suspect that in this reality, they will struggle to get gigs. But the electricity is back on and people are working. And Turner spends an entire page talking about the fucking logistics of food production and distribution. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it. I've done enough long, boring passages. Northern California is under their control, but it's out of order because there's a general there that is too kind to civilians. But it's all right because later they assassinate him. And he denounced our radical measures in the South as communism. He's appalled that we didn't hold some sort of public referendum before expelling the non-whites and that we didn't give individual trials to the Jews and race criminals we dealt with summarily. And it's like one of these things where it's like, that's not actually communism. That's just tyranny. But they're using communism as like a snarl word because they hate communism. They absolutely loathe communism. Communism is the epitome of everything they despise, and anti-communism is often seen as a euphemism for Nazis. So Turner describes Southern California. My most profound impression comes from the fact that every face I saw in the fields was white. No Chicanos, no Orientals, no blacks, no mongrels. The air seems cleaner, the sun brighter, life more joyous. What a wonderful difference this single accomplishment of our revolution has made. And the workers all feel the difference too. Whether they are ideologically with us or not, there is a new feeling of solidarity among them, of kinship, of unselfish cooperation to complete a common task. That's communism.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's using all the language of like the workers,
because the whole of the rest of the country is under martial law. That's what they do. They move everybody onto communal farms where everybody does a job and everybody pitches in and everybody gets something out of it. And this is literally after denouncing communism. They basically say that the way that we've coped in this all-white utopia, anti-communist white utopia, is to embrace communism. They don't call it communism, but it very much is communism. So the rest of the country is under martial law. The system propagandists are making a big thing out of our forced evacuation of non-whites and our summary liquidation of race criminals and other hostiles and degenerate elements here. It's not having the desired effect, however, except among the liberals and minorities. The bulk of the population is too preoccupied with its own problems at the moment to shed a tear for the victims of racism. And Turner's next mission, and I think we've all done something like this, is to smuggle 4 nuclear bombs into Washington, D.C. And this is in September 1993, which is when In Utero is released. And remember that the book started when Nevermind was released. And so in many ways, the Turner Diaries is sort of an allegory for the career of Nirvana. Like, it's very, very in the subtext, but it's there. It's definitely there if you know what to look for. Also, this is the month that Very by the Pet Shop Boys and Bat Out of Hell 2 are released.
I got a question.
Yeah?
Does Hunter mix with Bleach?
Yes, very possibly. Yeah, I think so. There's a large passage in it, I think, that talks about the sub pop bands. There's a lot of sort of inferences to Cad and to Mudhoney. Also, there is a bit where L7 are brought up, but obviously Hunter doesn't really like them because he thinks they're a bit uppity.
Okay, Cool.
So anyway, they leave California via Bakersfield, where in just a year's time, Korn will release their debut album and will change the face of metal music forever. But Turner and that aren't interested in that because they've got to get to Washington, D.C. from California. And I checked, right, okay, they have to travel across most of the country, which is like nearly 3,000 miles in a van with 4 nuclear bombs in the back of it. And they explain that basically what's happened is most of the army now fighting for the system are black people, because basically the system feels that they can't really trust white people not to be indoctrinated into the organization and to leave. And also there was that problem with the infighting and stuff like that. So they're going to have to travel across the entirety of the country, avoiding these troops, most of whom will be black. So they have to come up with a solution for this. What would you do if you were a terrorist organization that had to transport about 4 or 5 men, including 4 nuclear bombs, 3,000 miles across a predominantly black United States?
Oh, pretend to be black.
Yeah, you'd pretend to be black. And how would you do that?
By blacking up?
Yes, by blacking up. They fucking black up using boot polish.
Of course they do.
Fucking imagine that. The 4 of them driving along, trying not to be noticed, with nuclear bombs in the back, looking like fucking Al Jolson and the Black and White Minstrel Show.
God.
Considering this, we had decided that we would have a better.
This is satire.
It's not. This is the point. This is what I said. This is what I told you, man. This is like, it's so fucking ridiculous. This is amazing. This bit, like. Their blacked up road trip, like, it's incredible. Considering this, we had decided that we would have a better chance as non-whites of bluffing our way past any challenges. Accordingly, we had applied a dark stain to our faces and hands and pinned Chicano sound name tags on our fatigue uniforms. We figured we could pass as mestizos, just so long as we didn't run into any real Chicanos. For 4 days, I was Jesus Garcia. Anyway, right, they actually bump into a group of black soldiers at a petrol station who were there raping some white girls, and they completely fool these black guys, and it infers that basically it's because they're stupid. Anyway, this white soldier comes through and immediately sees through the disguise, and they get into a shootout and they kill all the blacks, and because he's a race traitor, they try and cut his head off. So
wow,
yeah, jihadi tactics.
Yeah.
They also set off a nuclear bomb in Miami, and yes, there are quite a lot of Jewish people in Miami. That might well be why he decided to pick that particular target. And they also threatened the government, saying that more bombs will go off, but adding, finally, we warn you that in any event, we intend to liberate first the entire United States and then the remainder of this planet. Then, when we have done so, we will liquidate all the enemies of our people, including, in particular, all white persons who have consciously aided those enemies. So why would the system fold if you're threatening to kill them anyway? Like, they wouldn't. But anyway, so they've got these nuclear bombs, remember, right? Okay, and they plant one in Washington D.C. They plant one in Fort Beaver, one in a suburb where a lot of Jews live, and then the last target is the Pentagon.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, we're on to chapter 26. September the 18th, 1993. So they're probably jamming the
close.
Well, yeah.
I thought we were going there then.
Just you wait. So they're probably like September the 18th, 1993. So they're probably jamming the new live album Show by The Cure. It's a double album. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. And it was released just a week prior to this. So much has happened. So much has been lost in these last 2 weeks. I can hardly force myself to begin writing about it. I'm alive and in good health. Yet there are moments when I envy the tens of millions who have died in recent days. My soul has dried up inside me. I am like a walking dead man. All that I've been able to think about, all that has been running through my mind over and over again, is the single overwhelming fact that Catherine is gone. Remember his girlfriend from back in the book, at the beginning of the book? Yeah, she's dead. Now, before today, when I was not absolutely certain of her fate, the fact tormented me and gave me no rest. Now I know she is dead. However, the torment is gone, and I merely feel a great emptiness, an irreplaceable loss. But on the plus side, the X-Files has just started. Literally just started this month. Right, so he can watch that to cheer himself up. Anyway, it transpires that Catherine unfortunately died in a shootout with black soldiers who were trying to rape her. And the book reminds us that most white girls allow themselves to be raped because otherwise they would suffer the terrible, horrible societal stigma of being called racists. But they've presumably been arrested. But while searching, Turner sees a huge fireball, and this is Baltimore being destroyed. For some reason, Baltimore is destroyed in a nuclear explosion, which means that The Wire would never have been made. And for Turner, that's probably a good thing because he would have hated The Wire. He really
he wouldn't have been a fan. I don't think.
Meanwhile, it was with the feeling of deepest despair that I and half a dozen others who were gathered around the television set in the darkened basement of the gift shop later that night heard a newscaster gloatingly announce the destruction of our liberated zone in California. He was a Jew, and he really let his emotions carry him away. I've never before heard or seen anything like it. You're murdering. You've just killed millions of people. Never mind. After a solemn rundown of most of the cities which had been hit that day with preliminary estimates of their death tolls, sample, and in Detroit, which the racist fiends struck with 2 of their missiles, they murdered over 1.4 million innocent American men, women, and children of all races. He then came to New York, and at that point, tears actually appeared in his eyes, and his voice broke. Between sobs and gasps out the news that 18 separate nuclear blasts had leveled Manhattan and the surrounding boroughs and suburbs out to the radius of approximately 20 miles, with an estimated 14 million killed outright, and perhaps another 5 million expected to die of burns or radiation sickness within the next few days. Then he lapsed into Hebrew and began a strange wailing chant as the tears streamed down his cheeks and his clenched fist pounded his breast. So New York's been destroyed, and millions and millions and millions of people have been killed. And he's going on about a bit of an overreaction to cry on the news, isn't it? Also, wow. Remember how horrified we were when they killed that woman by smashing in the face with the jar of pickles?
Yeah.
In retrospect, that was somewhat of a high point. The unfortunate reality of destroying New York in this time as well means that in this reality, there is no golden era of hip hop.
Oh man,
it is a true dystopia. But anyway, it turns out that California wasn't destroyed. LA was hit by a missile, but 90% of the people in the liberated zone survived. Unfortunately for people in other parts of the country where there was no advance warning, and the total death toll, including those who have died of burns or wounds and radiation in the last 10 hours, is approximately 60 million people. The missiles which caused
60 million
people have died in their striving for this white utopia. Yes, yeah. The missiles which caused these deaths, however, were not ours, except in the case of New York City, which received a barrage first from Vandenberg and then from the Soviet Union. Baltimore, Detroit, and other American cities which were hit, even Los Angeles, were the victims of Soviet missiles. Right. The terrorist organization that Turner is involved with, secretly attacks the Soviet Union and Israel. And what this does is basically the Pentagon sees that nuclear bombs have gone off in Russia, realizes that basically Russia will retaliate, and so they have to destroy the Soviet Union and also, I think, Israel, but definitely the Soviet Union. Right? So they essentially, the organization tricked them into blowing up Russia, which was a potential threat. And some of you may have spotted 2 things. One, in order to create this white utopia, they're creating a nuclear wasteland and destroying the entire planet.
Yeah.
And also, the
They've
plot...
really not thought this through, have they?
No, not really. And also, isn't that the plot used by the evil non-human computer system Skynet in the Terminator franchise?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So in order to create this all-white utopia, they've destroyed the planet using the tactics of a non-human AI system. They've also embraced communism. It gets sillier. What we lost, however, is substantial. About an eighth of the organisation's members and nearly a fifth of the white population of the country, not to mention an unknown number of millions of racial kinsmen in the Soviet Union. Fortunately, the heaviest death toll in this country has been in the largest cities, which is substantially non-white. Also, as a blow to fascists and the tone deaf everywhere, this month, Ian Stewart of the Nazi band Screwdriver is killed in a road traffic accident. Chapter 27. October 28th, 1993. So they're all probably listening to God Shuffled His Feet by the Crash Test Dummies. It was everywhere. Like, that album had incredible cross-genre appeal. I would imagine that even hardened neo-Nazi terrorists were jamming out to So anyway, Turner decides to go to Baltimore, I would imagine to ensure with complete finality that The Wire is never going to be made. And he says groups of scavengers were everywhere, poking through ruined stores, foraging in the fields with backpacks, carrying bundles of looted or salvaged goods, mostly food, and everything else to and fro like an army of ants. And the corpses, they were another good reasons for staying away from the roads as much as possible. Even in the areas where relatively few people were killed by the initial blast or by subsequent radiation sickness, the corpses were strewed along the roads by the thousands. They were nearly all refugees from the blast area. Close to the city, one saw the bodies of those who had been badly burned by the fireball, most of them who had not been able to walk more than a mile or so before they collapsed. Further out were those who had been less seriously burned, and farther out into the countryside were the corpses of those who had succumbed to radiation days or weeks later. All had been left to rot where they fell, except in those few areas where the military had restored a semblance of order. And Turner thinks that everybody who tolerated the system deserved to die. I'm not sure what is the correct description of the recent Holocaust. I'm sorry, of course, for the millions of white people, both here and in Russia, who died, and who have yet to die before we have finished in this war to rid ourselves of the Jewish yoke. But innocence, I think not. Certainly that term should not be applied to the majority of adults. After all, is not man essentially responsible for his condition, at least in a collective sense? If the white nations of the world had not allowed themselves to become subject to the Jew, to Jewish ideas, to the Jewish spirit, this war would not be necessary. We can hardly consider ourselves blameless. We can hardly say that we had no choice, no chance to avoid the Jew's snare. We can hardly say that we were not warned. Men of wisdom, integrity, and courage have warned us over and over again the consequences of our folly. And even after we were well down the Jewish primrose path, we had chance after chance to save ourselves. Most recently, 52 years ago, when the Germans and the Jews were locked in a struggle for the mastery of Central and Eastern Europe. That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all.
That's definitely not what happened.
I cannot think of a segment of white society, from the Maryland rednecks and their families whose radioactive bodies we bulldozed into a huge pit a few days ago, to the university professors we strung up in Los Angeles last July, which could truly claim that it did not deserve what happened to it. It's just fucking psychotic. No talk of innocence has no meaning. We must look at our situation collectively. In a race-wide sense, we must understand that our race is like a cancer patient undergoing drastic surgery in order to save his life. There is no sense in asking whether the tissue being cut is out now is innocent or not. That is no more reasonable than trying to distinguish the good Jews from the bad Jews. Or, as some of our thicker-skulled good old boys still insist on trying, separating the good N-words from the rest of their race. And that is explicit fascism. That's that the country is an organism attack from other people. So they bomb Israel and Palestinians and other Arabs overthrow the remaining Jews, and similar purges happen in the Soviet Union. And the book makes it clear that anti-Jews riots happen all over the world. And that makes no sense because it says, well, the people are settling scores, but the general population wouldn't have any scores to settle with Jews. So why would there be anti-Jewish riots? Again, it's just silly fantasy. It's just racism porn, basically. The explanation is basically the author's penchant for blood libel. It's the sort of thing which happened time after time during the Middle Ages. Of course, every time the people had finally had their fill of the Jews and their tricks. And this is this idea that Jewish people have been forced out of every society, blah, 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 blah. And the reason that this is discussed many times is simply because Jews until 1948 did not have a country. If you do not have a country, you do not have an army. If you do not have an army, there is nobody who will fight against you. And that leaves you open and ripe to stereotyping and being used as scapegoats for every ill in society. Like, that's a far more sensible and accurate explanation. So these anti-communists, they decide to build another communist utopia in Baltimore. We're well on the way to establish a subsistence economy in the enclave. We have a large water storage tank which we're able to keep full just by pumping groundwater from already existing wells. There are 2 substantially intact food warehouses, a nearly full grain silo. There are 4 working farms, including 1 dairy farm, with almost enough production capacity to feed half our people. So just to clarify, they are achieving this white utopia by living as communists in a nuclear wasteland. So they plan, as a final attack against the government, they decide to attack the Pentagon. They decide to attack the Pentagon by hitting it with a nuclear weapon. And they reason that the only sensible way to attack the Pentagon is by using a plane flying low into the Pentagon.
Oh, wow. Oh, what?
The fucking irony. The irony. In the massive ring of defences around the Pentagon, there was a great deal of anti-aircraft firepower. But we decided that a small plane flying just above the ground might be able to get through the 3-mile gauntlet with one of our 60-kiloton warheads. One factor in favour of such an attempt is that we have never before used aircraft in such a way, and we might hope to catch the anti-aircraft crews off their guard. Does that sound familiar?
Fucking hell.
I know. Remember what I told you? Remember what I said? I've got to the end and something happens in it and you're not going to fucking believe it. So just to clarify, right? Just to sum up, in this ultra anti-communist neo-Nazi book, they achieve a white conservative utopia by destroying the planet, making it a nuclear hellhole using the same plan as the evil computer system Skynet from the Terminator films, embracing communism, and then using the tactics of jihadis in a suicide terror attack on the Pentagon. In September, or planned in September. You fucking astonishing.
No, this book inspired all of that.
It's predictive programming.
1978.
It's predictive programming, isn't it? It's astonishing. So we're on to the final chapter.
This is mad.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
I'm just sitting here thinking, God, did Khalid Sheikh Mohammed read Turner Diaries?
Fucking hell, that's a good idea. Yeah, it could have well have done. It's ridiculous. So, chapter 28, and it begins, and this is the day when Turner is about to fly his plane loaded with a nuclear bomb into the Pentagon using the tactics of a jihadi suicide bomber. And they do it on November 9th, 1993, which is the day that Enter the 36 Chambers by the Wu-Tang Clan was released.
No, it wasn't, because New York is destroyed.
Oh, it would have happened. But they would have recorded it beforehand, hopefully. Anyway, so he decides to fly a plane at a height of 50 feet, going 150 miles per hour at the Pentagon. And he's fairly confident that there will be very limited CCTV footage of this, but hey-ho. I regret that I won't be around to participate in the final success of our revolution. But I am happy that I've been allowed to do as much as I have. It is a comforting thought in these last hours of my physical existence that of all the billions of men and women of my race who have ever lived, I will be able to play a more vital role than all but a handful of them in determining the ultimate destiny of mankind. What I will do today will be of more weight in the annals of the race than all the conquests of Caesar and Napoleon if I succeed. All right, no delusions of grandeur there then. Like, that is surprisingly similar to a lot of the mindsets of terrorists, killers, mass shooters and stuff like that. They feel that they will be remembered as being far more important than they are. And that's explicitly the ideas that this book is encouraging.
Hold on, I just caught something. Did you say November 9th?
Yeah.
That's 9/11.
Oh, shit! Jesus Christ! Wow!
Yeah, that is 9/11.
Jesus, this is quite spooky now, actually, isn't it? Like, Jesus, I'd not even thought about that. Good spot. Well done. So that ends the Turner Diaries, although there is an epilogue, because obviously Turner dies in the terror attack on the Pentagon. And the epilogue opens. Turner awoke in heaven with 72 virgins and recanted his race. No. No, it doesn't. His final mission was successful, of course, as we're all reminded each day on November 9th, our traditional day of the martyrs, where we all join hands and listen to Bring the Motherfucking Ruckus. They don't do that. By December, the organization had captured Detroit, but they immediately massacre all the white people. All the white people. They decided, can't take this anymore. Fuck it. What a lot of people don't realize is, they destroy Detroit, massacre all the white people, which I'm ambivalent about, because that would mean depriving the world of Eminem, but it would also mean depriving the world of Kid Rock. So I don't know on which side I fall with that particular one. All captured white troops, as soon as they had laid down their weapons, were offered a chance to fight with the organisation against the system. Those who immediately volunteered were taken aside for preliminary screening and then sent to camps for indoctrination and special training. The others were machine gunned on the spot without further ado. The same degree of ruthlessness was used in dealing with the white civilian population. When the organisation's cadres moved into the white strongholds in the Detroit suburbs, the first thing they found it necessary to do was liquidate most of the local white leaders in order to establish the unquestioned authority of the organisation. There was no time or patience for trying to reason with short-sighted whites who insisted that they weren't racist or revolutionaries and didn't need the help of any outside agitators in dealing with their problems, or had some other conservative or parochial fixation. So they're just taking over all the areas now. Including areas that are predominantly white, but just don't want to be run by these particular fascists. And the only slight relief during this period was the release of Lethal Injection by Ice Cube and Desensitized by Pitch Shifter. But then they run out of food and they can't feed anyone other than anyone already in the organization. So they decide to let everybody starve to death. That's how they achieve this white utopia, by starving most of the white people to death. Those who were admitted, and that meant only children and women of childbearing age and able-bodied men willing to fight in the organization's ranks, were subjected to much more severe racial screening that had been used to separate whites from non-whites in California. It was no longer sufficient to be merely white. In order to eat, one had to be judged the bearer of especially valuable genes. So they've descended into complete tyranny and eugenics. It goes on. Tens of millions of people perished during the first half of 1994, and the total white population of the country reached a low point of approximately 50 million by August of that year. But those lucky enough to survive had Machine Head's Burn My Eyes, Jeff Buckley's Grace, and Oasis is definitely Maybe, and also Dummy by Portishead to enjoy, so it wasn't all bad. Now, in Pittsburgh, the system fights back, and it's described as a bloody massacre. in contrast to the millions of people that they've just killed.
That's 60 million, yeah.
The Jews and the blacks went on a wild rampage of mass murder, reminiscent of the worst excesses of the Jew-instigated Bolshevik Revolution in Russia 75 years earlier. And they respond to this by destroying Toronto with a nuclear bomb. So it's like, come on. On January the 30th, 1999, in the momentous Truce of Omaha, the last group of the system's generals surrendered their commands to the organization in return for a pledge that they and their immediate families would be allowed to live out the remainders of their lives unmolested. The organization kept its pledge, and a special reservation on an island off the California coast was set aside for the generals. And this was literally a couple of days after Baby One More Time by Britney Spears was released. I'm not sure if that's connected or not. So the epilogue continues in the autumn, and this is when Mos Def releases Black on both sides, and Cypress Hill also released their greatest hits in Spanish album, which was probably in protest to the situation in California. China invades Russia, and the organization destroyed China with nuclear missiles. And the organization can't defend all fronts, so it decides, well, what would you do if you were an organization that couldn't defend yourself on all fronts? Well, obviously, you destroy large parts of the planet and turn it into a wasteland so radioactive that only mutated people live there. Therefore, the organization resorted to a combination of chemical, biological, and radiological means on an enormous scale to deal with the problem. Over a period of 4 years, some 16 million square miles of the Earth's surface, from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific, and from the Arctic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, were effectively sterilized. Thus was the Great Eastern Waste created. Only in the last decade have certain areas of the waste been declared safe for colonization. Even so, they are safe only in the sense that the poisons sowed there a century ago have abated to the point where they are no longer a hazard to life. And I think that's an apt metaphor, because they've fucked up absolutely everything. They've destroyed everything, even for themselves. It continues. But it was that 1 year, 1999, according to the chronology of the old era, just 110 years after the birth of the Great White One. Who do you think that might be? Yep.
I know this answer. Yeah.
The dream of a white world finally became a certainty. They could have just stayed on a fucking farm or something, but instead they decided to destroy the planet. They could have camped out in those woods in Pennsylvania right at the beginning. Right, okay. But instead, this is what they've got, right? Okay. Among those uncounted thousands, Earl Turner played no small part. He gained immortality for himself on that dark November day, 106 years ago. They've been living in a fucking nuclear wasteland for 106 years.
Wow, so that's the present day kind of framing device,
that's it.
Basically.
That's their white utopia. When he faithfully fulfilled his obligation to his race, to the organization, and to the holy order which had accepted him to his ranks, in doing so he helped greatly to assure that his race would survive and prosper, and the organization would achieve its worldwide political and military goals, and that the order would spread its wise and benevolent rule over the earth for all time to come. They survived barely. They aren't fucking prospering. Large parts of the planet are uninhabitable. Also, the order isn't benevolent. It murders anyone that it doesn't deem to be white enough. They murdered millions of people that they did deem to be white enough, and they let millions starve to death or become irradiated mutants. And the way they achieved this all-white anti-communist utopia was by embracing communism, destroying the entire planet, and then using jihadi suicide bomber tactics to attack the fucking Pentagon with a nuclear weapon on 9/11. The entire plan was a complete failure. And the book does not have the fucking self-awareness to realize that. And that's the Turner Diaries.
It's a bizarre choice of an end, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. And it's just... It's ironic. It's so ironic that in order to achieve the things that they want to achieve, which they don't achieve in any successful way, they have to embrace the tactics of everything that they supposedly despise. Why do they do that? Because it works. Because it works. Which begs the question, so why are you fighting against all of these things?
What I found fascinating about this whole experience is thinking of it as a writer. It is like how it's used like narrative and story as kind of a propaganda tool. So what the fact is like a diary, I thought, oh, that's quite an interesting device, especially how it was originally released in parts, like it's serialized, right? It's like a serial drama.
It's like the Charles Dickens of racists.
Yeah, basically that's what it is. The fact it's a hero's journey.
Oh, very
it's
much
all
so,
in there. Everything is in there, like the dark night of the soul when he's kind of he failed to kind of commit suicide. So it is like everything is there, and it's used story as a device to kind of get across some very horrible and unpalpable ideas. So I just think that's interesting that it's used kind of story in a mythological way, in a way to just kind of draw an audience in.
And tied all these sort of themes in and stuff like that, that like obviously they're either massively exaggerated or complete fabrications and stuff like that. But like the idea is that the people who've come to this book will question or go, really, is that a thing? That's what sounds plausible. If I believe X, then I'm perfectly prepared to believe Y. And Brent, you look like somebody's punched you in the stomach.
I'm just flabbergasted by the entire thing. It's just so fucking stupid all the way through.
I told you, I did tell you. Like it's, but that's why it's important to like that we did this to highlight for two reasons: one, so that people don't have to go out and read it themselves, and two, to highlight how fucking stupid the book is. Like only only those who want to be radicalized by this book, or the very simple-minded will be convinced by any of the rhetoric in it. Like it's, to my mind, it's very much a book for people who are already wanting to go down that sort of path. But evidently, it's been hugely influential and very very damaging to the world, which is why it deserves mocking. It deserves mocking because to take away any power that it thinks it has no power. It's shit. It's shit on every level. It's factually inaccurate. It's badly written. It's boring. Like it's totally contradictory. The ideals that the author in fact professes to believe in, he sells out his own principles in order to get to his endpoint, embracing communism and things like that, like suicide bombing. These are not things that they should be about. Like it's destroying the whole fucking planet. It's such an apt metaphor, and that's the thing, they don't realize that. That's what it's saying. Any sensible person that comes away from this will say the message of the book is that fascism destroys everything,
and nature takes its course.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. End it there. That's it.